Welcome to our channel. We are offering a free unedited and original version of this audiobook. To get your free audiobook, please follow the link in the description.
This is Audible.
Treasure. Written by Rebekah Weatherspoon, narrated by Kira Grace. Chapter 1. Alexis adjusted the length of silver and pink beads around her neck. It was the only way to displace some of her nervous energy. She was excited to be out, glad her parents had even let her out. But so far the night, the whole year, had been too much for her to handle. The scar on her wrist proved it. Thankfully, her sister had convinced their mother to let Alexis tag along for her bachelorette party, even if the outing came with a few conditions. Alexis tugged at the beads again, soaking in the sensation around her neck. She loved her sister and the effort she always put in to make her feel included, but Alexis still felt out of place with her sister's friends. They came in varying shapes and sizes, but every woman with them that night had a beauty and a confidence about her that Alexis would never grasp. She'd get by, but she'd never find secure footing. A loud screech from the other end of the limo forced her to look up. Cinta, bridesmaid number 2, had her head out the sunroof and was screaming loud enough to alert all of Los Angeles to their presence. On her left, her sister Sasha, the blindfolded bride-to-be, grabbed Alexis's hand. "What's going on?" she asked with a little laugh. "It's just Cinta being silly," Alexis replied. "She's trying to find out what getting her head chopped off feels like." Trudy, the maid of honor, darted from her seat on Alexis's other side and pulled Cinta back in. "You're pooping all over my party," Cinta shouted as she collapsed back in her seat. A bit of champagne splashed out of the bottle in her hand and onto her leg. "This isn't your party, fool," Trudy had to remind her. "And how are you drunk already?" "I'm not drunk. I'm buzzed. There's a difference," Cinta shot back. "Whatever. Just don't make a scene. This is Sasha's night. We will send your ass home in a cab," Trudy said with some finality. Alexis tried not to laugh. She got along with most of Sasha's friends. They were nice to her at least when they remembered she was there, but Cinta saw her as an easy target to tease. She loved giving Alexis shit about anything and everything. Now that she was distracted by her drink, Alexis saw no reason to throw out the bait. "Where are you guys taking me?" Sasha asked for the third time since they'd left the restaurant. "Stop asking. It's a surprise," Trudy replied. She had organized the whole night. Dinner and drinks at a fancy Asian fusion place where Sasha had opened gag gifts covered in more plastic penises than Alexis wanted to see again. She'd gotten her sister a more practical gift. A book of 365 love affirmations for newlywed couples. "Lex, tell me," Sasha whispered, sort of. "No," Trudy said, giving the back of Alexis's hand a playful slap. Alexis cleared her throat as the limo started to slow down. She hadn't said much all night. "I can't tell you, but I think we're here." The outside of the Luxor Lounge wasn't much to look at, but the purple and green neon sign flashing nude girls seemed to light up the whole block. It was located on a central drag between Beverly Hills and Hollywood, but Alexis hadn't had a clue the strip club even existed. On Trudy's directions, Alexis took Sasha's hand and helped her out of the car while the rest of her friends flitted through the club's entrance. Alexis tensed when she saw the bouncer, wondering if she'd be carded. But Trudy paid their cover fees and they all slipped inside. Once they cleared the inner set of doors, the blindfold was torn from Sasha's face, and with her exclamation of glee, the Chambers bridal party suddenly had the run of the club. Trisha turned in the locker room mirror with another grunt. She didn't have time for this shit. "What's wrong?" her friend Quenisha asked from behind her locker door. "I can't get this damn ribbon to stay." The outfit was new, sexy as hell, but resisting Trisha's curves. The top and bottom were a soft black material covered in ruffled black overlay that was embroidered with pink and white flowers. It looked more like lingerie than some of the metallic or neon get-ups in her collection. It also looked great against her brown skin, and it would look even better if the pink ribbon stayed in place and her bottoms didn't slip off before she even hit the pole. "Here, Quenisha came to her rescue and secured the ribbon in a cute little bow. She had Trisha turn, and she adjusted the other side to match. Perfect. Thanks. Another sigh. Trisha was so out of it. She shook her head before her friend could even ask. I just have a ton on my mind. Mercer is saying I still owe them money for last semester, which is some old bullshit because I paid in cash at the beginning of last year. I still have to get money together for this semester's books, and the kids need back-to-school clothes. Trisha groaned and saved herself from banging her head against the mirror. She made good money, and she knew she would get the right amount together in time, but still, the stress was there. Quenisha started to offer support, but before she could get a word out, Angel came streaking into the dressing room. Bachelorette party, bitches! All hands on deck! Trisha immediately forgot about her financial and academic woes and gave herself one final check in the mirror. Thursday nights were always good, but parties and big groups, especially groups of women who always seemed to make the male clientele spend more, meant everyone would be taking home a nice little chunk of cash tonight. See? Quenisha said as she fluffed her own hair. Let's go work these ladies, and you might be able to cover your books and clothes for the kids with tonight's poll. Trisha's hair was in place, the shiny locks of her sew-in hanging down past her shoulders. Pink eyeshadow and lip gloss completed the look. Trisha checked the black ankle strap of her heel one more time, then followed Quenisha out to the floor. They linked arms just as they hit the carpet. Working as a seductive pair often led to more lap dances and trips to the private rooms in the back. A few of their regulars had already taken their seats when Trisha had arrived for her shift, but now the club was packed. The party of women was busy settling in the leather chairs around the center pole. 10 or so beautiful black women with a Latina and a lone white girl thrown into the mix. They were all cute, even the tall baby Butch, who looked completely lost and terrified as she clung to the bride. She was easy to spot with the fake veil pinned to her hair. A few guys gave up their spots so the women could sit together. Trisha and Quenisha walked by the DJ booth as Brewster called Trisha's name. I got Angel up after Tammy, and then it's you, kid. Q, you're up after that. Cool? Perfect. Thanks, Bruce. Trisha called back. Yeah, that works. Quenisha added. Their coworkers had already swarmed the bride and her friends, so they made their way toward 2 guys who had just walked in the door and turned on their charm, offering them drinks and a place to sit. Trisha was treasure then, on autopilot, doing her best to keep her customers' attention while Quenisha worked her magic on his friend. The flirting was artificial and the responses Treasure gave were canned and automatic, but by the time Angel was wrapping up her routine, she knew the guy she was working would pay for a lap dance. She excused herself, promising she'd return, then slipped backstage. Angel's song ended and she came back through the thick curtain, panting but barely sweating. She was a tiny little thing, a cute blonde white girl who'd run away from home, but she was anything but a sob story. Her flexibility made her one of the highest paid girls in the house. She made almost as much as Trisha. Trisha took a breath as Brewster started his spiel. Gentlemen, and you ladies in the front, I know you're gonna love this. Please get your dollars ready for Treasure! Trisha parted the curtain with a dramatic thrust of her arm, just as one of her favorite R&B pop jams with a hip-hop hook started to play. It took her a few seconds to assess the bridal party as she made her first twirls around the pole. The bride was having a blast, bouncing in her seat and already tossing singles on the stage, even though Trisha hadn't really done much yet. The other women were cheering her on. A few, yeah girls, and finally a black girl, and work it, Treasure, made her laugh as her body swayed in time with the music. It was the baby Butch who caught her eye, though. She sat frozen next to the bride, clutching a wad of bills in her hand. She was a fine one, milk chocolate brown skin with long hair braided down past her shoulders in 2 stylized cornrows. She had on a hint of eyeliner and a tight pink V-neck sweater. But Trisha could see the loose jeans and sneakers that rounded off the outfit. She couldn't be more than 18 or 19. She had a baby face, and inexperience lingered around her like a thick cloud. Her eyes were locked on Trisha, and at the same time she couldn't seem to decide where to look. Trisha amped up the treasure charm and slid to her stomach. She used the muscles of her stomach and thighs to slink across the stage to the bride and her young friend. When's the big day? She said over the music as she continued to move. The bride beamed up at her and tossed another dollar just in front of her tits. Saturday. Congratulations, Trisha replied. And who is this? The bride reached over and pulled the other girl closer. This is my baby sister, Alexis. Trisha instantly saw the family resemblance. The bride was shorter and softer, way glammed up, but they had similar facial features, especially in their eyes and with their full mouths. Trisha writhed in front of them and greeted the baby sister with a coy hello. Alexis just swallowed and blinked. Trisha winked at her and slid back up to her feet. The dollars were already collecting at the front of the stage. The rest of the women were enjoying the spectacle of it all, reveling in a wild night out with their girls. But this young Alexis was going through some sort of religious experience. Trisha knew what it was like to be the lone queer in a group, but this girl looked like she felt so out of place. Trisha decided to dedicate the rest of her dance to her. She climbed the pole and twirled and spun down its length. She climbed it again and slammed to the floor in a dramatic split. She rose to her knees and turned around, showing little Alexis her ass as she made it clap. She peeled off her top while the girl was distracted. She turned back around and offered her tits as another surprise. The look on the girl's face was hilarious, halfway between pure fear and the most intense ecstasy. She was in such a state of shock, the bills in her hand were still firmly clutched in place. But Trisha didn't mind. The other women were paying Alexis's share. The song was almost over, and Trish was nearing the moment when she had to bear it all. She pulled her bottoms to the side and rolled her hips barely a foot away from the edge of the stage, maybe 2 feet from the girl's face. She was practically drooling. When Trisha gave her pussy a little pat, she was positive this Alexis girl was going to pass out. Trisha was pretty sure her will to witness the rest of the show kept her conscious. The night was starting to wind down, but Alexis was totally wound up, horny, and completely embarrassed. She couldn't believe she was surrounded by her sister and her friends and she was soaking wet. A handful of the strippers had caught her eye with their soft bodies and cleanly waxed cunts. But that treasure? It had been over an hour since she'd left the stage, and Alexis was still having a hard time breathing. She had been nervous about coming to the strip club to begin with. Besides Cinta, who Alexis thought was bi because she was always making jokes about wanting to make out with Trudy, except no one really thought she was joking. Alexis was the only noticeable gay one in the group. It was embarrassing to think she was the only one made to feel all hot and uncomfortable. And it was extra embarrassing to know that she was already planning to masturbate as soon as she got home. Treasure had come back out to the floor a while ago and was currently sitting on the lap of some man close to the door, rubbing his shoulder. She didn't look like she was enjoying herself at all, but Alexis understood. It was a part of her job. Still, she couldn't help but wish it was her lap Treasure was sitting on. The party continued to thump on around her. Alexis sat by and watched the next stripper take the stage. She tried not to yawn. It was way past her usual bedtime. A couple seats over, Cinta paid for a lap dance of her own. Sasha and a few of her friends were up by the DJ booth dancing with 4 strippers who were working the room. Trudy reappeared from the restroom and handed her sister a Coke that she'd spiked with the rum that they'd snuck in. All nude strip clubs in California didn't serve hard alcohol, apparently. It didn't matter to Alexis, though. She was underage, and with her meds, she wasn't allowed to drink. She'd had a sip of champagne at dinner, but that was it. Their mom had made Sasha promise. Alexis snapped out of her daydreaming when Trudy patted her leg. "You want to hit the champagne room?" she said with a devious look in her eye. "What do you mean?" Alexis asked. "You want a private dance? You've earned it, hanging out with our drunk asses all night. Go on. I think you can pick a girl and then you get a private dance in the back. It's supposed to be extra sexy." Alexis chuckled as Trudy did her own body roll in the chair. "Yeah, okay. I guess that could be fun." "Come on." Trudy grabbed her hand and they started scanning the room. It wasn't 2 seconds before 2 strippers appeared from nowhere. "Can we get you ladies anything?" The one who had spent most of the night with Treasure asked. Alexis thought her name was Mystic. "My friend here is looking to get a private dance," Trudy said. "But I think she should choose." "Of course. What's your flavor, honey?" the other woman asked. Alexis couldn't help but smile. She knew how strippers did their thing, but she never expected them to be so nice. She cleared her throat and tried again. "I liked her." she said, pointing toward Treasure. "But I guess she's busy." "Nah, that guy's not going to pay. Hold on." Alexis felt a twinge of guilt as Mystic made her way across the room and whispered something in Treasure's ear. Treasure nodded, then smoothly extricated herself from the guy's lap. He caught her wrist, but let it go when she said something else, coupling her words with a sweet smile. In a blur, Treasure was in front of Alexis. In her platform heels, they were nearly the same height. "Alexis, right?" she said with the sexiest voice Alexis had ever heard. Alexis nodded. "Let's go for a walk." Alexis hesitated but got moving when Trudy gave her a little shove. They met a man at the private door, and Trudy paid him for 2 songs. And then they were alone. The room was oddly shaped, a deep rectangle that had mirrored walls and velvet couches on 3 sides. Treasure took her hand and directed her to sit in the center of the couch that ran along the rear wall. It was almost quiet in there. Just the bass from the main floor and the pounding of Alexis's heart could be heard inside the insulated walls. The music started and Alexis tried to breathe. Treasure slid onto her lap, straddling her in one drawn-out motion. "You can touch me," Treasure whispered in her ear. "But just listen to me if I say stop." Alexis nodded and rasped out an, "Okay." Her hands automatically went to Treasure's ass, the ass she had blatantly stared at an hour before. It was soft and round and big. As Treasure slid her crotch against Alexis's stomach, Alexis gave the skin beneath her hands a light squeeze. Treasure swirled her hips again and brought her forehead close to Alexis's. "You have soft hands," she said. Alexis gulped. "Thanks." Then she glided her hands slowly up and down the generous mounds. Treasure sat back, balancing her weight on Alexis's thighs, then pulled the material off her left boob, exposing her nipple. Alexis's first instinct was to lick it or bite it, but she kept her mouth to herself. Treasure must have caught her train of thought because she smiled before she slid to the floor. She opened Alexis's legs and thrust her chest between her knees, rubbing her torso along the inside of her thighs. Alexis's pussy was burning, aching, begging for some sort of contact. But the thick briefs, the layers of denim, and the fact that Treasure wasn't going to actually have sex with her kept that from happening. Treasure reached up and just barely brushed her lips over Alexis's cheek as she made her way back to Alexis's lap. In a blink, she rotated so she was face down with her hands on the floor, her pussy covered with the smallest piece of fabric, rubbing against Alexis's stomach. Alexis slid her hands back to Treasure's ass, and she spread her cheeks gently apart. Treasure nearly stopped moving and let Alexis get a good peek. Alexis almost died. Treasure's pussy was wet. As if she realized it at the same time, Treasure maneuvered her way back upright and settled her weight on Alexis's thigh. There was a certain gleam in her eye. Treasure was actually enjoying this too. A small voice came to life in Alexis's head. "She's on the job, dumbass. Trudy paid her to be back here. You're not on a fucking date." Alexis knew it was true, but she couldn't help being as turned on as she was, and she couldn't keep her hands from sliding back to Treasure's ass. Suddenly, the song ended. Treasure stood and adjusted her G-string. "How are you doing?" she said with a sweet smile. "I'm good," Alexis managed to squeak out. "Good." "Good." Treasure winked just as the next song started up. She slid back into Alexis's lap, but this time it was different. Alexis decided that even though this was Treasure's job and this was something she'd been paid for, pleasure could be a two-way street. When the wet heat of Treasure's pussy rubbed against her thigh, Alexis tried to hide how good it felt, the warmth and the wetness. When Treasure exposed her boobs again, Alexis touched them, gently teasing her nipples with her fingertips as Treasure continued to pleasure herself on Alexis's leg. She didn't fight it when Treasure gripped her breast through her sweater and her bra. Her nipple tightened, and she wished she could take her own clothes off. Treasure moved closer, and somehow when the second song ended, they were wrapped around each other with Treasure's lips at Alexis's neck and a wet patch forming on Alexis's jeans. Treasure stood again and fixed her skimpy outfit. Then she led Alexis back to Trudy. kissing her lightly on the cheek before she left her with her chaperone and blended back into the crowd. A little while later, Sasha's bridal party was rounded up and shoved back into the limo. The rehearsal dinner was less than 24 hours away, and this group needed to sober up and get some sleep. Maybe not in that order. Alexis stared out the window the whole way back to her parents' house, confused by the turn the night had taken, even more embarrassed, and completely sure that now the closest she'd ever come to having sex was with a stripper named Treasure. Chapter 2. Trisha waited in the hallway outside room 204 in Tamper Hall for Professor Kapoor's Computer Science 101 class to start. The last few weeks had been crazy. She'd pulled plenty of money together to cover her books, the last of her tuition, and back-to-school clothes for her mother's foster kids. But the stress and twists in her stomach hadn't settled until she'd checked in the Friday before and picked up her student ID. Things were finally falling into place. She'd been stripping for 4 years. She could strip for another 10 or 15 more if she needed to, but once she'd finished her GED, she'd realized that she would eventually want a career that didn't require her to work nights and take off her clothes. She'd knocked out a bunch of courses at Mercer Community College, and now she was attending Southern California University, chasing after a BS in computer science. There were certain things she knew she could teach herself at home, like HTML or CSS, but Trisha had wanted more of the classroom experience she'd missed out on when she'd left high school. She'd also always wanted that diploma, the piece of paper to show prospective employers when the time came. She'd heard about the hard time women, especially black women, had in the tech world, but Trisha knew she could handle the pressure. She could do this. The door to room 204 sprang open, and students started filing out. Other doors along the hall did the same, spilling students into the halls to move on to their next class or an early lunch. Trisha waited until the room was mostly empty before she made her way inside. The classroom was smaller than a lecture hall, but bigger than the small rooms she'd sat in at Mercer. Instead of desks, there were tables that sat 3 students across. Trisha took a seat in the middle of the room. She didn't want to be front and center on the first day, and she didn't want to get lost in the back. When she was settled with her new laptop on the table, Trisha smiled to herself. She was there. It was real. She was doing big things for herself. The professors at the front of the room switched places. After a brief chat, the balding blonde man with a loose polo shirt left, and the younger Indian man put his stuff down on the long table in front of the whiteboard. He started laying out papers. Trisha almost offered to help, but she kept her mouth shut and stayed in her seat. "Who are you?" he asked abruptly as he glanced up at her. "Trisha Hamilton." "Welcome, Miss Hamilton. Ajit Kapoor. Glad to have you. I'm a little out of sorts today, so you'll have to pardon me." He continued digging through his backpack. Trisha laughed to herself. Professor Kapoor did seem a bit flustered, but he had a warmth in his voice that she appreciated. As long as she didn't fuck around, she was sure they would get along just fine. Soon the room started to fill up. Professor Kapoor continued to pull materials from his bag, repeating several times that he would be with them in a moment. Trisha glanced at the clock and then around the room. It was 12:05 and she was the only girl in the class. It was going to be an interesting semester. Finally, Professor Kapoor stood up straight and put his hands on his hips. "I had a cool demo to show you guys, and I am pretty sure I left the drive on my desk. Oh well. I'm Professor Kapoor, and this is Computer Science 101, the fundamentals of computer programming. How many of you—" He stopped himself as one last student power-walked through the door. It had been weeks, and in the fluorescent classroom lights and a more feminine set of clothes, the tall girl looked completely different. But Trisha recognized her immediately. It was the baby butch from the bachelorette party that had torn through the Luxor. This time her hair was up in a messy bun, and she wore much more makeup and a tight t-shirt and tight jeans that showed off the curves Trisha had gotten a brief feel of that Thursday night. It came rushing back to her. The private dance, the feel of the girl's hands on her ass, the way she'd almost come in the girl's lap. Everything but the girl's name. Trisha searched her memory but drew a blank. She had mixed feelings about running into people she'd gyrated on out in the real world, but she was comforted by a somewhat familiar face. Also, she wasn't the only girl in the class anymore. "Sorry," the girl mumbled as she tugged on the straps of her backpack. "I couldn't find parking." "Not a problem. There's a seat next to Miss Hamilton. Grab it and we'll get rolling." The girl took 2 steps, and her eyes widened as she realized exactly who Miss Hamilton was. Trisha smiled and moved herself out of the way. It looked like the girl remembered her too. "Hey," Trisha whispered as the girl took her seat. "Hey." Still shy, Trisha thought. Professor Kapoor talked a bit more about his plans for the semester and began passing out the syllabus. Then, to everyone's surprise, he let everyone go. He didn't even take attendance. "The first day is always sticky. Get your books if you haven't already. Get a jump on the first reading assignment and then come back on Wednesday ready to rock." No one asked him to repeat himself, and just like that, people were making a break for the door, though a few hung back to talk to the professor. Trisha grabbed her laptop and decided to risk the awkward conversation. "I know you from somewhere, right?" she asked. The girl shot her a sideways glance and a hint of a smile as she slid her copy of the syllabus into her bag. "Yeah, I think there was a lap dance or something." Maybe she wasn't so shy. "I'm Trisha. Sorry, but I've blanked on your name." "Alexis." "Right, the bride's baby sister." They shook hands and headed toward the door together. "Nice to see you again." "Likewise. What are you going to do with your hour?" Alexis asked, which surprised Trisha a little. "This is my last class on Mondays. I guess I'll get lunch, then maybe check out the library before I go home." "Are you working tonight?" "No, I take Sundays and Mondays off. So I have, negative friends here. Do you want to get lunch with me?" Trisha asked boldly. Yeah, she felt like a new woman, ready to tackle the world. But she didn't want to ignore a chance to make a new friend, especially when they had a class together. For a moment, Alexis looked at her like she'd just asked her if she wanted to rob a bank with a stick of butter and a toothpick, but a moment later she snapped out of it. "Yeah, sure. Let's go check out the food situation." Alexis couldn't believe she was sitting across from the stripper she'd met at her sister's bachelorette party, a few slices of pepperoni left on the platter between them. She had a real name, a cute real name that suited her. She looked just as good in her regular clothes as she did in a frilly top and thong. The high-top Nikes she wore worked just as well as the 6-inch stilettos she'd worn to swing around the pole. And she was funny and smart, and they were in the same class. Trisha Hamilton had been on her mind ever since that night. Hers were the only boobs other than her own that Alexis had ever touched. Trisha's lips were the only lips that had ever come close to her skin. She never thought she'd see her again, but she'd thought about her a lot. At the most inappropriate times, like right in the middle of Sasha and Michael's vows, treasure would pop into her head, and Alexis would be desperate for a little private time all over again. She'd come to terms with how sad her existence still was. Her parents watched her like a hawk. The girls she went to high school with, people she'd thought were her friends, still pretended she didn't exist, even the ones who were attending SCU too. She had Sasha, but she was back from her honeymoon and living with Michael. He was her life now. Alexis only had her violin and her own shitty thoughts to keep her company, and now a bunch of conflicting feelings about the girl who'd insisted on paying for their lunch. "Looks like all of your gears are spinning," Trisha teased her as she popped a piece of pepperoni into her mouth. Alexis shook her head and tried not to fidget with the brown leather wrist cuffs she wore. It was too hot for long sleeves. "I'm still in shock, I think. I didn't expect to see you again." "Me neither, but it's cool. You were sweet that night, and you seem pretty normal now," Trisha replied. "I want to ask you a bunch of questions, but I don't think I should. They'll sound kind of fucked up." Trisha looked at her for a second, then leaned forward in her chair. "You can ask, and I reserve the right to leave you here if you say something crazy." Alexis thought those were pretty fair terms. "Do you ever enjoy it? Like the lap dances and stuff?" "Only sometimes. Men don't do it for me at all, and it's hard to get turned on by clients, especially when you're only with them for 3 minutes. People don't come to strip clubs to have a realistic experience, and even when things get a little hot, it's over so quickly. You've only shared a feeling and then it's gone. I have regulars, but they just vent to me and I listen. That's the least sexy part of the job." Trisha shrugged, and Alexis's mind filled with a whole other pile of questions. So Trisha was gay, but that didn't mean anything. It just meant that Alexis had a slightly better chance. A better chance at what, she had no clue. Yeah, I wouldn't want guys all up on me like that, but it wouldn't be so bad to dance for women. You guys were great. Honestly, it's so much better when women come in. We get it, you know? So even though I'm doing the same routine or whatever,
We are delighted to bring you an extraordinary offer. Purchase through us and get any audiobook of your choice for a mere $2.99.
so worried about that ick factor I get from guys. I know it sounds a little sexist, but it's true. Alexis understood. She had a hard time relating to people in general, but most of her bullies in high school had been boys. She found it easier to be around other women, even if she didn't always feel completely comfortable in their presence. But yeah, sometimes I enjoy it. I did with you. Alexis tried not to smile. Cool. Before I forget, we should swap numbers, Trisha said, throwing her off again. What? Okay. In case one of us misses class or we want to study together. I mean, it's better if you have someone to study with. Trisha handed over her cell and waited for Alexis to type in her info. It took too much effort for her to enter the number she knew by heart, and she was surprised she remembered how to spell her name. But eventually she got it all in there and hit save on the new contact. She handed the phone back and watched as Trisha typed something. Alexis's phone vibrated in her pocket. There, and now you have mine, Trisha said. How was your sister's wedding? Alexis was glad she'd changed the subject. No more talk of lap dances. It was nice. Want to see me in a dress? Yes, Trisha replied with a bright smile. Alexis wanted to kiss her right in the middle of the crowded pizza place. Instead, she pulled out her own phone, and after she saved Trisha's info, she pulled up her sister's wedding website where the pictures from the ceremony had already been added. She thumbed to a picture of herself walking down the aisle in the light green silk dress. She'd dreaded wearing it, but once her hair and makeup were done, she'd realized she didn't look half bad. She showed the pictures to Trisha. Trisha's grin grew wider, reaching her eyes. She glanced up at Alexis, then back down at the phone. Maybe she thought Alexis didn't look half bad either. Trisha's phone lit up on the couch beside her. She looked at the screen and felt the strangest tick of disappointment. The text was from Quenisha. How was the first day? She ran her thumb across her screen and started typing back. Good. Tons of homework already, but my professors are chill. But her professors and her pages and pages of reading were practically the last thing on her mind. It was weird and a little fucked up even. They'd just met. Well, met again. They'd only had lunch, talked a little. No big deal. But Trisha kept thinking about Alexis. It wasn't like she didn't know why. Those few minutes they'd spent together that night in the VIP room were pretty unforgettable. Also, Alexis was really fucking fine. Trisha spent almost all of her time around beautiful women, but there was something about Alexis that made her so attractive to Trisha. It might have been the simple fact that she was tall, a little lanky, and awkward, or that she was so cute and had no idea. After their lunch, they'd gone their separate ways. Alexis had said she'd had something she wanted to look into at her course counselor's office, and Trisha had had a mountain of work to get started on. She'd climbed into her car and found herself smiling about that picture of Alexis in her bridesmaid dress. She'd found herself thinking about Alexis the whole way back to her apartment. That posh bachelorette crew hadn't been busting with the types of chicks that Trisha usually ruled with. For all she'd known, they'd just been blowing through town. So yeah, seeing Alexis again was definitely a surprise. She slid her finger over her phone screen again and found Alexis's number. That strange feeling, like a nerve being flicked, made her stomach twist again. With dropping out of high school and going right to work, Trisha had grown up quickly. It had been by choice, and by choice she'd shielded herself from certain experiences that some dancers at her club considered to be part of the job. She'd dealt with asshole guys who got too handsy. She'd forgotten to pay her light bill once and spent a few cool winter days in the dark. But when she thought about Alexis, she knew she'd been missing out on one simple but important thing. A hallmark of your teenage years. Relationships. The boy-girl drama of the high school dating game had never been for her, but by the time she'd realized that she was gay, she was already living on her own, and she'd been too busy to really do anything about it. Or so she'd always thought. Trisha shook her head and flopped back on her couch. She barely knew this girl. Why was she even thinking about relationships or a relationship with someone like Alexis? Actually, there was no someone like Alexis about it. She was thinking about dating Alexis, thinking about being with her in more ways than one. She wondered how many people dealt with this sort of thing. Trisha was so used to putting on an act. How did you approach someone you were interested in? How did you even figure out if you were interested in someone enough to approach them? All this life experience, and Trisha couldn't even figure out if she liked a girl or if she just enjoyed looking at her. And did she even want to date someone she'd met at the club? Alexis's smile popped into her mind again, and the details of how and where they'd met suddenly didn't seem to matter. Quenisha dated guys here and there, but they were almost always boys from the neighborhood. Quenisha never really talked about them, though, and when she did, she only mentioned what they did and where they went and maybe what they bought her. But she never mentioned her feelings. Ever. Were the feelings even there? Her phone chimed again. Another text from Q. "That's great. Going to CVS to pick up some stuff. Wanna come?" Trisha didn't even think of hesitating. "Yes," she texted back, and then she hopped off her couch and grabbed her sneakers. She needed to get out of her house and out of her head. Alexis barely beat her mom home. After they ate lunch, she and Trisha hung out a while longer at the pizza place on the edge of campus. Alexis had wanted to hang out a little more, but she'd had to see about some requirements for her major. Plus, Trisha had said she had to go. By the time she'd finished with her course counselor and made a quick pit stop at the bookstore, traffic back to Pasadena was crazy. Just as she dropped her keys in the kitchen basket, her mom's Audi pulled up. Alexis grabbed a drink instead of heading straight for her room and waited for her mom. She came in the kitchen door, bubbly as usual, and kissed Alexis on the cheek. "Your dad's in surgery, so it's just me and you, sweetheart. How about we order in some pizza and you tell me about your day?" "Okay, but I had pizza for lunch." "How about Thai?" "That sounds good. I'm going to take a shower first. I was walking around all day." "Phew, it was hot out, wasn't it?" her mom said. "Take some water with you tomorrow. Make sure you stay hydrated." "I will." Alexis's mom touched her cheek and offered her that mom's smile. "We'll both get washed up and then it is dinner time." Alexis rolled her eyes and turned around as her mom did a little jig. Sasha got her playful side from their mom. She'd given Alexis a hint of her looks and her math skills. In the shower, Alexis tried not to think too hard about her family. Her mother ran a non-profit that helped working mothers. In her free time, there were other charities, events, functions, always something. Jocelyn Chambers never stopped moving. Neither did Alexis's father or her sister. They were all active in the community and loved by it too. Most days, Alexis felt like she didn't belong to them. She didn't have Sasha's charm or intelligence. She didn't have her mother's do-gooder nature. She didn't have her father's drive. Forget the other stuff she was trying to figure out. Most mornings, getting dressed was the hardest part. She'd look at the dresses her mother had bought her and think how they looked on her too tall frame. She didn't have Sasha's perfect body. Then she'd look at the menswear her sister had helped her pick out and think of her father's reaction. She fell somewhere in the middle. She liked her white tees and her dunks, and she loved her mascara. Sometimes she liked tight jeans too, like today. But it was hard to express it and impossible to explain to people who didn't understand and didn't want to. How do you get people to see that some days you just don't feel right in your own skin? Things had gotten a bit easier, though. Now that Sasha at least knew what was going on, that expressing herself, her gender and her sexuality, was hard for her, Alexis had someone who would listen. Her mom was completely clueless, but she was trying. Her dad? He was just disappointed. He'd wanted a carbon copy of Sasha. When he'd gotten an oversized tomboy who turned out to be gay and couldn't handle the basic pressures of life, it seemed like something in him had deflated when it came to his enthusiasm in calling Alexis his daughter. He loved her, but things were different. Alexis toweled off and changed into her pajamas. It was still early, but getting plenty of sleep was part of her wellness regime. A part she actually enjoyed. She'd eat, do her homework, try not to abuse the phone number privileges Trisha had given her by filling Trisha's phone with texts, and then she'd go to sleep. Her mom was on the couch when she got back downstairs. She hadn't washed up or changed, but that was about right. She'd also given Alexis her ADHD. Her mother just handled the symptoms better. She sat there, flipping through the channels, one shoe off, one halfway there. Alexis joined her with her backpack, but she held off on whipping out her work. "So, how was it?" her mom asked. "It was good. My English professor is a Delta." "Oh, great. You can still pledge, even if you're not living on campus. Get settled in, see how you feel, and then next year look into it. I know they'd love to have you." Alexis grinned a bit at her mother's enthusiasm, but the idea of devoting her time and emotions to such an obligation made her instantly uneasy, and they were just talking about it. "We'll see. I made a new friend. She's in my comp sci class." Friend wasn't exactly the truth, but she'd had someone to eat lunch with, at least for today. "Oh, honey, that's great." "Yeah, she's a day student too, so we're going to study together and stuff." "Baby, that's fantastic. I'm so proud of you." Alexis didn't like being congratulated on things that normal people did all the time, but she knew her mom was coming from a good place. "How's your rest?" Again, she was just checking in. Alexis turned her hand upright and looked at the 2-inch scar. It had healed nicely months ago, and it didn't bother her anymore when she played her violin. "Fine." Her mom leaned over and kissed her cheek again. "I love you. Here's the remote. Food's on the way. I need to use the restroom." Alexis took the remote from her mom and turned to Jeopardy. Then she took a deep breath and focused on planning out the rest of the night again in her head. That lasted all of 5 seconds. Her meds were wearing off and she was starting to lose her focus. There were assignments to think about and she had to clean up her room. But then all that mattered was Trebek's next question. Just as the doorbell rang, her phone buzzed with a text. It was a text from Trisha. Alexis stared at her phone and blinked twice as the doorbell rang again. She started to get up, vaguely recalling something about food and letting a delivery guy in. But all of her focus was on her phone. Her mom yelled that she had it before Alexis had completely gotten up. She nearly tripped as she sat back down and swiped her thumb across the small screen in her hand. Apparently, texts from someone she was moderately obsessed with made her giddy with excitement, and so nervous that her feet stopped working. "Have you ever sneezed while putting on mascara?" A picture popped up then of Trisha making a god-awful face, mouth hanging open in a playfully painful way, one eye squeezed shut with mascara smudged on her cheek and just below her eyebrow. Alexis laughed, more like choked, and let out a hysterical squawk. She'd never in a million years thought Trisha would text her about anything other than schoolwork, but she knew she'd be an idiot if she didn't text back. "Will you be able to save the eye?" "It was real touch and go for a while there, but I think we'll be okay." "Getting dolled up for a night out?" It was none of Alexis's business, but she still wanted to know. She wanted to know more about Trisha, period. "Nope, hitting the books and hitting the hay. I was just playing around with some new stuff I picked up." Another picture popped up, one of Trisha fake crying, mouth hanging open in a dramatic grimace with mascara smudged around both eyes. "Now I match." Alexis nearly choked again, trying to cover her own laughter just as her mom came back with their food. "I hope it's cool that I texted you. I know we kinda just met." Alexis's stomach fluttered as she read the words, but she felt a little bit better. Much better, actually. She'd been dying to talk to Trisha again, but knew she'd have to wait or risk coming off like a creepy stalker if she texted her a whole 2 hours after they left each other. She was glad Trisha had broken the text seal. "No, it's totally cool. I was thinking about texting you, but I didn't want to bother you." "I'd tell you to put your phone down so we can eat, but I can't remember the last time I saw you texting." "It's nothing," Alexis said as she typed one more text back. She didn't want to end their conversation, but she didn't want her mom asking any questions either. "Sorry, but I have to go. Dinner with my mom. But text me again sometime, or later, if you're up." "'Kay, enjoy your dinner. Pray for my impaired vision." "May the Heavenly Father bless and keep your eyeballs," she texted back before she met her mother's waiting smile. Chapter 3. As she walked towards Tamper Room 204 that Friday, that same twinge hit Trisha's stomach again. It had been there for the last 2 days on and off, whenever Alexis had popped into her head. They'd only seen each other one other time that week, during their Wednesday class, during which the professor had used all 90 minutes. talking about all sorts of things that had nothing to do with the reading that had taken Trisha forever to finish. After, even though she'd wanted a repeat of their Monday lunch together, Trisha had to watch the kids before she'd headed to work. She'd been so busy, but she'd hit Alexis with a few texts when she could. Alexis had always responded. Between her shifts at the Luxor, her schoolwork, and carting around the little ones, she realized she wished she had more time to talk to Alexis. She may have been shy and kinda awkward in person, but via text Alexis was funny and quick. Trisha looked forward to the few minutes a day she could grab to shoot Alexis a message, and she hated the hours she had to wait sometimes to reply to whatever hilarious or cute thing Alexis had sent back. It was hard to admit it, but Trish was definitely developing a crush. She wanted to see Alexis again. She got her wish as she waited for the class before theirs to let out. Alexis was early this time, just a few steps behind Trisha as she took a spot against the wall outside room 204. She was back in baby butch form today, rocking loose jeans and a white tee. Her hair was in a ponytail, but she had on a little bit of makeup and a stack of bracelets on her left wrist. Trisha got the feeling she was still sorting out her look or that she liked to change things up. But Trisha liked it. She smiled at Alexis as soon as she cleared the top of the stairs, just as the other class let out. How brutal was the reading? Alexis asked in that quiet, clear way Trisha was starting to like. Girl, I got a paragraph in and my eyes started glazing over. But I finished it. So did I. I looked up Professor Kapoor, too. You know, he developed an app that sold for over $1 billion, and he developed a software program that almost all of California hospitals use. No shit. Professor Kapoor is an actual genius. This pimpled white kid from their class interrupted. He's only teaching here this year. He went here for undergrad and thought it would be fun to come back and teach. It's bullshit to him, but we're learning from the best. Alexis's mouth popped open, but Trisha just shook her head. It wasn't worth it. The kid grumbled something under his breath and walked to the desk in the back of the room. Trisha followed him in, but sat down at a table closer to the front. Alexis sat beside her. The hour went by quickly. Zitface, so outraged by how little the women folk knew about Professor Kapoor, asked him about the apps he'd developed. That ate up the whole class. Trisha had some stuff to get done before her shift at the Luxor, but she wanted more than 50 minutes sitting quietly beside Alexis. Lunch? She asked as they packed up their stuff. Sure. Pizza again? Yeah. Trisha laughed a little. I like that place. Maybe it could be their place, she thought, then instantly turned away from Alexis so she couldn't see the embarrassment on her face. They walked across campus talking about Professor Kapoor's work. I feel like that's one of those things you just get lucky with, Alexis said as they entered the pizza shop and joined the long line. I'd love to develop an app, but where's the job security in that? Trisha replied. Well, it's secure if you sell it to Facebook for $1 billion. I guess I'll just have to keep stripping until my $1 billion app idea sells. How does that work? Alexis asked, a slight blush hitting her cheeks when Trisha looked up at her. How does what work? Stripping and developing an app? She teased her, biting the inside of her lip when Alexis smiled back. No, I mean, I guess, how do you quit stripping? Do you want to? Trisha leaned back and thought for a moment while Alexis ordered their pizza and some drinks that she insisted on paying for this time. Trisha wasn't sure what to say. She'd never had this conversation with anyone but herself. They grabbed a small table by the window and Trisha cracked the top of her soda. Some of the girls I work with want to do it for as long as they can. Like my friend Quenisha. I'm sure she'll settle down one day and stop. I don't know, when she has kids or something. Maybe not even then. Her mom stripped after she was born. I'm sure she'll quit one day. Trisha said the last bit with more confidence. I just don't know when. Some of the girls I work with hate it, and they are doing it because they have to. But you like it? Yeah, it's fun, and the money is amazing. I think that's the hardest part. I do want a career. Not that stripping isn't a career, 'cause it is. I just want a regular 9 to 5. But I know even with a degree it'll take me a while to match what I'm making at the club. That's why I picked comp sci for a major. I was doing all this research on stable, lucrative careers, and there are a lot of jobs in the tech field that pay really well. But I have a feeling I'll be dancing for a while. Yeah, I was just wondering. You never really hear much about stripper retirement. Alexis said, I mean, unless you're planning on becoming a real housewife or a basketball wife. They'd have to let lesbians on those shows for one. Also, I think you need to be married or at least in a relationship to be considered a wife. I'm neither. Alexis nodded, biting her lip like a nervous tick. Yeah, me neither. Trisha swallowed an invisible lump in her throat and tried to act casual. Oh yeah? Completely unattached? Yeah. Alexis fidgeted with her bracelets before she looked up at Trisha through her painted lashes. I've never had a girlfriend before. Neither have I. Really? How old are you? Alexis asked. 20. You? You're not a really tall 14-year-old, are you? A natural smile came back to Alexis's face. No, I'm 18. Nice and legal. Jokes, you got 'em. I do, but I'm serious. No girlfriend, ever. It's been work, and school. What's your excuse? Alexis shrugged. Just hasn't happened yet. Maybe we're both overdue. Maybe. Trisha wanted to ask more about Alexis's lack of relationships, or if she wanted to have one in the near future. But she bit her tongue when she saw how red Alexis was turning and how she was squirming in her seat. Also, she completely chickened out. How long can you bug someone about their love life before it becomes painfully obvious that you're interested in their love life, and maybe, just maybe, you want to be a part of it? Luckily, one of the pizza guys came over with their food and broke up the tension. What about you? Trisha asked when they were alone again. What do you think you'll do with your degree? I'm not sure yet. Something that doesn't require me to be around a lot of people. A smile hit the corner of her lips, but Trisha got the feeling she was completely serious. My dad's in medicine and my mom does some nonprofit stuff, but she's kind of a trust fund kid, so she never really had to work. I pointed out some flaws in my sister's company website, and I didn't hate the idea of doing web design or development when she mentioned it to me. So, yeah. I'm in it for the money, and you're in it to avoid human contact. I think we've figured out why we're both single. Trisha laughed, then felt her own face heat up as Alexis blushed. Yeah, Trisha was definitely developing a crush. Alexis sat on the floor of her bathroom going through her makeup case. Her laptop was open on the cool tiles beside her. An eyebrow tutorial paused on the screen. Her mom had made her wait until she was 16 before she'd started getting her eyebrows done. Now they were manicured but not styled. She wanted to try something more dramatic. Not to wear out of the house, but just to try. If only she could find her purple pencil. She paused her search and picked up her phone. Her silent, void of any new texts from Trisha phone. Trisha was at the Luxor Lounge now, Alexis assumed. They'd hung out longer this time, but eventually Trisha had said she had to go get ready for work. She'd spend her Friday night getting paid to do something cool and exciting while Alexis spent her night alone in her bathroom. She kept thinking about their conversation over and over. The details Trisha had spilled and all the stupid things she herself had said. Alexis couldn't believe she'd admitted out loud that she'd never had a girlfriend, as if her inexperience would somehow be a turn-on to someone who had seen and experienced so much more than her. She also couldn't believe she'd asked Trisha how old she was after she'd confirmed her single status, as if you applied for a girlfriend license once you hit a certain age. That was the definition of embarrassment. But really, how could she be single? Maybe dating while stripping was hard, jealousy being a thing and all. Trisha was so beautiful, so easy to be around. She had to have more than her fair share of admirers, Alexis included. Yeah, she couldn't lie to herself about that. Alexis had been attracted to Trisha from the moment she first saw her. But now that they had talked and texted and spent a little time together, Alexis knew she was starting to develop actual feelings. She dropped her phone and tried to put the thought out of her mind. They were only 2 years apart, but Trisha was a confident woman, and Alexis still felt like a stupid little girl trying to figure out how to survive with herself. Confidence and self-assurance seemed completely out of her realm of capabilities. So did the idea of her and Trisha being anything more than occasional text buddies who sometimes shared a slice. Even if they became real friends, they would probably just be school friends, the kind that only hung out around campus. Then Trisha would go back to her cool, independent life, and Alexis would go back to her hole of solitude. "I'm just here to grab one thing." Alexis turned around when she heard her sister calling down the hall. "Hey, Sosh," she said back. A second later, her sister peeked around the corner. "Hey, what are you doing?" "Makeup practice." Sasha crouched next to her and looked at the laptop screen. "Oh, cool. Send me the link." Alexis picked up her computer and emailed her sister the video before she forgot. When she looked up, Sasha was smiling at her. "It's Friday night. Nothing happening on campus? They usually do stuff for freshmen the first couple weeks." Alexis shrugged and fiddled with her tweezers. Sasha was right. There was a dance mixer thing at the campus center, and one of the black sororities had opened their doors to new female students to just come hang out. But Alexis had decided to stay home. "I didn't want to go alone. I haven't really made any friends yet. I mean, I hung out with this one girl, but she had to work tonight." She deliberately left out the bit where Sasha had met her too. "And I don't know if we're friends like that anyway." Sasha settled in and leaned against the sink cabinets. "Why? What makes you say that?" Alexis shrugged, an automatic reaction both her parents insisted was something she needed to work on. "I know things are tough, Lex, but high school and college are different. You can have a better time, you know." "Yeah. Don't be afraid to try. Things will be okay. Heck, maybe there are some music groups you can join. Bring your violin down to campus and you can meet some friends through some jam sessions." "Yeah, okay. That's not a bad idea." Alexis wanted to say more about Trisha. She wanted to tell her sister that she liked Trisha, but that would just add to her humiliation. "I like this girl, the stripper from your party, but she's too cool for me. I'd rather be out with her than here by myself, but it's not like I have a choice." But she didn't say any of that. She just kept fiddling with her tweezers. "Michael's waiting for me in the car. I just came to get my boots. When you move out, move out. I left so much shit here. See you Sunday?" "Yeah." Sasha squeezed Alexis's arm before she hopped up and left the bathroom. Alexis picked up her phone and scrolled through the short catalog of texts she'd shared with Trisha. Tears stung her eyes, and her throat started to hurt. Whatever was or wasn't happening between her and Trisha wasn't worth the tightness in her chest. She'd have to settle with being school friends with the most beautiful, sweetest girl who had ever spoken to her. There was so much value in a friendship. Alexis knew that. But she also wanted to know what it was like to have someone like her back. She exhaled a shaky breath and decided to pack it in for the night. She didn't like feeling this way. A night free from distractions was exactly what Trisha wanted. She wanted to relax and sleep and not think about Alexis. But Alexis was still running laps through her mind. Single, never had a girlfriend, shy, adorable, sweet, soft butch Alexis, who fidgeted so much when she seemed nervous, and smiled the best smile in the world when Trisha hit the right notes during their conversations. She wanted to stop thinking about Alexis for 5 freaking minutes so she could finish putting on her makeup and get out on the floor. She had bills to pay. About 6 minutes later, Quenisha found Trisha sitting at the long vanity on the other side of the locker room, half dressed with one eye's worth of eyeliner on her face. She was fiddling with her phone. "What's up?" Trisha turned and looked at Quenisha as she pulled up a chair. "I think I caught feelings for this girl." "What girl?" Trisha tried to explain that Quenisha had already met Alexis, but Quenisha was having a hard time remembering the details of the night the bachelorette party had come through the club. "There were like 20 of them. I'd have to see her again." Trisha instantly regretted not having any pictures of Alexis. Not that she should. They weren't really anything, but she wanted them to be something. "Girl, this is stressing you out," Quenisha said with a little chuckle. She pulled a G-string and a top from her bag. "You should see her face right now." "I don't know what to do." "What do you mean you don't know what to do? Put it on her." "I can't. I already have." Trisha flopped forward in the chair, hanging her head before she faced Quenisha again. "She's seen all this. She knows what I'm working with. It's... You know I've never dated anyone before." "Yeah, so? It's not like it's hard." I know.
Ooh, you like her. You don't just want to fuck her 'cause she looks good or whatever. You like this girl.
Yeah.
Is she into you?
I think so, but I'm not sure. She looks at me like she is, but she's crazy shy.
So just tell her. She's either cool with it or she can't handle it and freaks out. But either way, you'll know and you can go about your business. You have her number or anything?
Yeah, we've been texting a little.
Call her up. Do it now before we get busy.
We are delighted to bring you an extraordinary offer. Purchase through us and get any audiobook of your choice for a mere $2.99.
Can't.
2 days ago, I saw you make an old white dude come in his pants and you handled it like a pro. But now you can't call some chick from your class just to say, hey girl, I want to holla at you?
Fine, I'll text her.
Good.
Trisha stared at her phone for a full minute trying to think of what to say, trying to ignore Quenisha's taunting. Quick, dirty, and direct, or do I take the slow, sweet approach?
God damn, give me your phone.
Quenisha snatched the thing out of her hand before she could say no.
Alexis?
She asked, trying to confirm the contact on the screen. Yeah, that's her. Trisha replied. Quenisha's thumb was already flying across the screen. Then she tossed the phone back before Trisha could ask what she was typing.
Hey, shorty, wanna be my main chick?
The fuck? Trisha kicked the leg of Quenisha's chair. It barely moved.
What? That sums it up, right?
Trish started typing an apology just as Alexis's reply popped up.
Excuse me?
Now she had no choice but to lay it all out there. Sorry, made the mistake of telling my friend that I was kinda crushing on you. She typed, then hit send.
Oh,
was Alexis's reply. Oh didn't sound good. Is that okay? That I'm crushing on you a little bit.
Yeah. Is it okay that I'm crushing on you back?
Trisha could feel the silly grin spreading out over her face. More than okay. But what do we do now?
Keep hanging out? Hang out more? See where things go?
Trisha glanced up as Angel came into the locker room. She had a respectable clutch of ones and her bikini top in her hand. Some more guys just came in and joined Lonesome Joe. Get your booties ready, girls. It was still early in the night, but as long as there were customers in their seats, someone had to be on the pole. Trisha quickly typed out another text, hating the idea that she had to shut down the butterflies in her stomach so she could focus on work. Have to go. Talk tomorrow?
Okay. Have a good night at work.
Alexis added a smiley face. It almost matched the goofy grin Trisha didn't even try to cover up as she took to the floor. Chapter 4. The weekend had never been so long. Trisha was able to talk to Alexis for all of 1 minute before a minor disaster popped up when her little foster sister, Kara, decided to dive headfirst off the couch. When she wasn't working or waiting in the ER for a 7-year-old to get stitched up, she could only steal a few moments to text Alexis here and there. From her responses, it sounded like Alexis was just as busy. She always seemed to be doing something with her parents or her sister. She told Trisha about church and brunch at some country club on Sunday morning. They both had to study that afternoon, and then Trisha was back watching the kids during her mom's shift at the hospital. By Monday morning, she was anxious to see Alexis again. They didn't talk more about their new status or what that new status even was, but those butterflies came fluttering up every time Trisha's phone buzzed with a new text message. They tried to fly up and out of her body when she saw Alexis again sitting at the table they shared in Tamper 204. You have plans after class? Trisha asked as soon as she sat down. She had a ton to get done that afternoon, but spending more time with Alexis was priority number 1.
Not much. Just homework, I guess. Why? What's up?
You want to come do some laundry with me? I'm just going to hang out in the laundromat and read, but we could hang out together.
Yeah, sure. I have to be home around 6. Family dinner again.
Alexis rolled her eyes. I love that. Family dinners are nice.
Yeah, I guess.
Trisha could feel the charge between them, like the way Alexis could barely seem to look at her and how Trisha couldn't seem to look anywhere else. She wanted to grab her hand or kiss her or do something to show her that things really had changed since the last time they'd seen each other. She wanted to make sure the crushing was still okay, but just when she opened her mouth, Professor Kapoor came into the room and made right for their table. He handed them both a pamphlet for the WIT program for women in fields of engineering. There was information for clubs, meetings, and mentoring programs. Trisha had applied for the WIT scholarship, but she didn't get it.
Ladies, stop by the Morton Center when you get a chance. I've heard great things about this program.
Trisha glanced back as Pimples scoffed at them like they were getting some sort of special treatment. But they both thanked Professor Kapoor and agreed they would check it out. The hour went by quickly. Professor Kapoor was a pretty funny dude, and with him at the front of the room discussing the finer points of computing sciences, Trisha didn't regret signing up for his class, even if she had to share the time with some asshole clowns. The whole hour she kept thinking of Alexis beside her. She had another stack of colorful bangles on her wrist. Toward the end of class, Trisha gave in to the urge to touch them. Alexis flinched a bit, but when Trisha looked up, she was blushing and grinning a little bit. Alexis had never been to a laundromat before. This spot off Jefferson was hot as hell and noisy. A half-busted television mounted on the wall was playing a scrambled soccer game. The constant rumble of the dryers mixed with barely audible old-school R&B coming from run-down-looking speakers mounted in one corner. It was probably the worst place to try to focus on anything or even hold a conversation, but Alexis wasn't in any hurry to rush home. She'd been waiting 4 days to hang out with Trisha again. They'd stopped and grabbed burritos, and now she picked at her food as she watched Trisha load a washing machine. This wasn't a date, but Alexis wanted it to be. She'd been thinking about Trisha double time since the last time they'd seen each other. Triple time since Trisha had sent the texts that had sent her into an anxious tailspin for the rest of the weekend. And now they were hanging out. Now Alexis would do her best to act like a normal human being who could hold conversations without fidgeting herself to death from nervous embarrassment. Alexis ran her fingers over her bracelets as sweat trickled down the back of her neck. She'd almost shit when Trisha had touched the bangles covering her scar, but she realized that at some point she might have to tell her about it if she wanted things to go further between them. Her therapist had told her it was her choice, sharing her experience. Her therapist called it an experience, not an accident like her mom did, or a mental breakdown as her dad liked to categorize it. But yeah, it was her choice if and when she wanted to talk about it. Trisha made her feel anxious and a little nervous, but comfortable at the same time. Maybe she wouldn't freak out if she knew the truth. She kept watching Trisha as she slammed quarters into the machine. Then she came back over and hopped up onto the counter beside Alexis. Now we wait 3 hours. When you get your own place, make sure you have a washer and dryer in unit. You have your own place? Maybe that made sense. Alexis couldn't picture a stripper living at home with her parents. Not with parents like hers, anyway. Moved out of my mom's when I was 16. Lived with a friend for a while, then I got my own apartment 2 years ago. It's cute, but when I was looking around for spots to live, I didn't think about how sick I'd get of coming to the laundromat all the time. Oh. Alexis said. Doing her own laundry was part of her chores, but that and keeping her room tidied were the extent of her responsibilities. Clearly she had some growing up to do. You want to study, or I have my tablet and my headphones. We could watch a movie. I think an hour lecture earned us at least 90 minutes of fucking around. Let's see what you got. Alexis pulled out her tablet and scrolled through to her streaming movie account. She let Trisha pick the movie, a horror flick that had just been released. Alexis didn't watch horror very often. She was kind of a punk when it came to jump scares and certain types of violence, but this was about ghosts in a rural farmhouse. She hit play, then put the tablet on the counter between them so they could watch and eat. After they were done with their lunch, Trisha patted the space next to her and pulled the tablet into her lap. Unsure, but tempted by the closeness, Alexis hopped up beside her. She tried to relax as Trisha moved closer so they were touching, thigh to thigh. She tried to blame it on the shared earbud, but things only got worse when Trisha put her head on her shoulder. Why do white people move into houses like that? Trisha asked. You can tell that it's haunted from the outside. Alexis chuckled. Our house looks like that. 3 levels, white with black shutters, More rooms than necessary, cavernous bathrooms, and deep closets. Did all the townspeople tell your parents not to move there because a family died in it and it's been haunted ever since? Do the windows and the basement look like portals to hell? No, it's ghost-free, and my mom keeps it nice and bright. Even the attic is furnished. Alexis replied. She jumped, though, just as the first glimpse of a ghost crept from the daughter's bedroom door. Don't worry, Trisha teased her. I got you. Thanks. They watched the rest of the movie huddled together, practically sweating in the blasting heat of the laundromat. Once, Trisha hit pause so she could put her clothes in the dryers, but she returned to the same spot, right beside Alexis. At one point, she started playing with Alexis's fingers. Alexis didn't know what to think or do, so she just let it happen. Trisha's hands were smooth and soft. When the movie was over, Trisha didn't move. She just sat there, her head still on Alexis's shoulder, her fingers lightly trailing along the back of her hand. Alexis swallowed, then swallowed again. I'll never be able to go in my closet again, was all she could think to say. You hang out in there a lot? Trisha smiled up at her. She was so close. Alexis thought she was going to faint. Yeah, actually. It's where I practice my violin. You play the violin? Yeah. It was practically the only thing she'd held on to from her old life. You should come over sometime, like after class. I can play for you. My parents have pretty regular schedules, so we'd have the house to ourselves. You need to get me alone or something? Don't want your parents to meet your new stripper friend? No, I just meant... I'm fucking with you. I'd love to come over sometime. Maybe Friday, before my shift? Friday's cool. The way Trisha suddenly couldn't seem to take her eyes off her lips made Alexis dizzy. Or maybe it was the way they were both breathing, or the rhythmic thunking noise from the dryers. The air in the place was already hot and thick, but that didn't explain the heat that was rolling up from Alexis's chest. She didn't know who moved first. Maybe it was her. Alexis moved maybe the first fraction of an inch, but Trisha met her the rest of the way, closing her eyes just as their lips touched. Alexis had no clue what she was doing, but they both sort of went with it. Like that night in the VIP room, things got hot really fast. Faster than Alexis expected. Their kiss went from something that resembled a simple wet peck to something more aggressive with tongues and hands. And they kept kissing and kissing. Alexis knew they were in public and there were plenty of people around, but she couldn't stop herself. Not with Trisha's hands rubbing her lower back and Trisha's boobs pressed between them. She felt like they were all alone. When they finally took a moment to breathe, Alexis's head was swimming. She thought she'd been uncomfortable that night in the strip club, but this was worse. So much worse. She felt like she would burst if they didn't go further. Like, now. Trisha leaned up and kissed her one more time before she sat back and ran her gaze over Alexis's face. They were both having trouble breathing, but Trisha still cracked a small smile. You okay? Alexis nodded. Yeah, you? Yeah. I've been wanting to do that all weekend. Was it good? Alexis asked like an idiot, like she wasn't even in the room when this amazing kiss had happened. Trisha laughed again. Yes, it was very good. She slid off the counter and reached for her bag. I have to do some work or I'll be screwed tomorrow. Me too. Alexis exhaled a few shallow breaths before she pulled out her reading for her freshman English class and did her best to focus. It was hard, though, with her friend who was mutually crushing on her and who had just kissed her sitting right there. Thursday, it happened. Alexis ran into Cammie Woodward. She had been in her own world as usual, this time thinking about Trisha. Her head was down, her eyes focused on the brick path in front of her, but as she rounded the statue of the school's mascot, something told her to look up, and she noticed Cammie coming right toward her. Cammie had been Alexis's co-captain on their high school varsity volleyball team. They weren't really close, not the sharing their deepest secrets type of friends, but they had spent a bunch of time together since they'd first made the team their freshman year. As far as Alexis knew, Cammie hated her. She'd cut Alexis out of her life completely when she got out of the hospital, so Alexis didn't expect Cammy to even acknowledge her as they both passed through the center of campus at the same time. The last time she'd seen Cammy had been at graduation. Cammy's mother had stopped her parents, and they'd had a quick conversation about how proud they were of the girls. Cammy had bailed and taken off to find some of her other friends before things had gotten too awkward, and Alexis had continued to stand there not saying anything. Her mom had suggested the girls get together over the summer, and that's when Cammy's mom had decided it was time to cut and run. The other parents still loved her mom and dad, but everyone was a little freaked out by Alexis, the poster child for troubled teens. Alexis hadn't forgotten the look on Cammy's face that day, the look that said, "Sorry, but no way. I can't deal with you, like now or ever." It was the same look she expected from Cammy the moment they made eye contact, but Cammy actually said hi. She actually stopped. "I didn't know you were going here." She leaned in for a hug. Alexis awkwardly accepted it. Cammy was short for a volleyball player, but she had an insane vertical leap, and her spike game was nasty. She was also a mean sprinter. SCU had taken her on an athletic scholarship for track. She was already rocking a SCU track and field t-shirt. "Yeah, comp sci major." "I'm undeclared like a motherfucker." Cammy laughed. Alexis laughed too. Kinda. "Just gotta keep my grades up so I can race in the winter." "You start training already?" Alexis asked, already knowing the answer to the question. Cammy had probably been training all summer. "Yeah, it's cool. Getting hazed and stuff by the older girls. I had to run a 40 barefoot yesterday. Coach was pissed, but they're cool." Cool. Alexis didn't know what to say. She had nothing going on, and the last time she and Cammy had talked, they'd been in the locker room before the quarterfinals, before Alexis had tried to pull the plug on herself. There was Trisha, but Trisha wasn't really a piece of small talk to share with someone you barely knew anymore. "Yeah. Man, I thought you were going to Stanford," Cammy said. "Nah. I mean, I got in, but I decided to stay closer to home." End of conversation. Alexis didn't want to get into this. Not again. "But yeah, I gotta..." "Listen, I'm sorry. I don't know what happened." Alexis felt her face getting hot, but the rest of her was numb. Cammy knew exactly what had happened. It's not like she blamed her friends or her teammates, but still she didn't really want to talk about it. "It's cool, really." "Come on, no it's not. My mom told me to call you, but I kept punking out. I didn't know what to say." "It's okay. Seriously, I'm fine now." "Good. What dorm are you in? I'm over in Windsor." "I'm at home, actually. Cheaper." Cammy clearly didn't buy it. She knew Dr. and Mrs. Chambers had plenty of money to put Alexis up in a dorm. Still, Cammy played it off. "Well, let's hang soon. I mean, we're both here. It would be cool to catch up, study together and stuff." Alexis wanted to say no, but she went with it and gave Cammy her new number. The number Cammy had was old. The flood of fucked up text she'd gotten after she'd been released from the hospital, insincere apologies for who knows what, and dozens of texts wishing she'd succeeded in her attempts to end it all, had called for new digits. Finally, Alexis headed to class. She didn't really expect Cammy to text or call her, but as she sat down in her Eastern religions class, she realized that she wasn't sure that she didn't want to hear from her. Trisha waited in the parents' line outside of Kelsey and Kara's elementary school. She had a few hours to get them home and fed and get the others started in the general direction of their homework before she had to book it over to the Luxor. She and Quenisha were working out a routine together that they'd be whipping out that Saturday night. She checked her phone again. The kids got out at 2:30 on the dot. The bell was going to ring in 3 minutes, but they needed to come the hell on. She checked her phone again a minute later, just as a text from Alexis popped up on the screen. She'd been trying to pace herself with her texts since they'd left the laundromat. Since they'd kissed. The high she felt from finally kissing someone she was really into had carried her through her whole night at the club. She'd stopped herself from gushing to Quenisha, but her friend still knew why she kept smiling and gave her plenty of shit about it. Trisha admitted that things were moving in a good direction, but she wasn't ready to tell Quenisha just how much she was falling for Alexis. For now, she wanted to keep this to herself. She'd also wanted to text Alexis as soon as she'd gotten home from work, But something told her that a girl who had to be home for family dinners wouldn't be up for texting at 2 a.m. She was glad Alexis made contact first.
Hey, can I ask you a question?
The text read. Trisha texted back. Yes, I'm available to do your makeup anytime. I'll poke you in the eye, free of charge. They'd continued to joke about that mishap as they'd bonded over their love of makeup over the past week. The next few texts popped up quickly, one after the other.
No, I need my eyes.
It's something else.
Sometimes I need reassurance about weird things. This may sound weird, but I need to know. Do you really like me? Beyond the crushing.
The clear answer was yes, and Trish wasn't bothered by Alexis's need for reassurance. Sometimes she needed it too. Still, Trisha felt like something was wrong. She wasn't sure what to say. Yes, I like you. A lot. She hit send, then immediately followed with, Are you okay?
Yeah, I am. Just ran into someone and it wasn't cool.
The school bell rang and Trisha glanced up to catch the first sign of stampeding grade schoolers. Yes, I like you if me shoving my tongue in your mouth wasn't obvious enough. And I'm sorry for your not cool situation.
Trisha wanted to call Alexis. She wanted to see her, actually make sure she was okay in person. But right then, she just hoped they could wrap up this conversation before she had to give the kids her undivided attention. Her fingers flew across her screen. She saw their little heads bobbing through the front door not a second later.
I want to talk, but I'm on babysitting duty this afternoon. Can we talk later?
Trisha!
Kelsey screeched as she tore her way across the schoolyard. Kara was right behind her. Alexis had the half-minute walk back to the car to text Trisha back. Just as she got the girls in their seatbelts, her phone buzzed again. She checked it once more before she pulled away.
Yeah, text me when you get a chance.
No texting and driving,
Kara yelled.
You promised.
Trisha had to thank their principal for insisting the kids help the parents and guardians be more attentive behind the wheel. I know, Kay.
I'm Kay.
Kelsey giggled. You're both Kay. And both Kays get ice cream as soon as we get back to Sophie's house. Sweets were enough to get them off her back. She slipped her phone in her bag just to be sure.
Chapter 5.
The afternoon went by as smoothly as it could. Kelsey and Dina only fought twice, and Daryl was only 30 minutes late coming home from his after-school boys' club. Her mom was exhausted when she got home, just in time for Trisha to take off. But before she left, she took a couple of minutes to actually speak to her mom. It had been like this for a while, passing the kids off between the two of them and two other helpful women in her mom's neighborhood. Always dashing by one another, always rushing. But Trisha liked to stop for a second, just to look at her, just to say hello. Her mom leaned against the counter and scrubbed her hand across her face. When she seemed like she finally cleared her head, she looked up and smiled at Trisha. Her mom, Ms. Sophie Hamilton, was so beautiful. She'd put on a lot of weight in the last few years and she'd given up taking care of herself to take care of the kids. But Trisha had gotten 100% of her looks from her mom. It was a relief to know she'd still look good when she passed over the hill into her 40s.
How are things going, college girl?
Her mom asked. Good. Like my professors, like my classes. And I met someone.
Her mom rubbed her face again. She was listening, but Trisha knew she was counting down the minutes until she could really sit down and get some sleep. She took care of patients all day, and then she came home and looked after 5 kids. Trisha felt bad for leaving. Sometimes.
It's a girl.
Her mom froze for a second, and then she resumed rubbing the life back into her skin. They had never talked about relationships, just work and bills and the kids. She'd thought she'd have to come out to her mom one day when she found the right person, but she hadn't thought that day would come so soon. She didn't know what Alexis was to her. They hadn't had the official status conversation, but this was the right time to say something. Her mom seemed cool with it. Girls? Okay, that's fine. I just want you to, be happy and safe. Is she nice?
Yeah, she's really nice. I'd actually met her at the club a while ago. She came in for the bachelorette party with her sister, but we have a class together.
So she knows you dance? Trisha swallowed the little knot that formed in her throat when her mom said dance.
Yeah, she was shocked to see me at school, but it's not an issue.
Just keep being honest with her about the job. Jealousy makes people act funny.
She doesn't seem like the jealous type. She's kinda shy.
What's her name? Trisha tried not to smile, but her heart actually fluttered when she said it out loud.
Alexis. Alexis Chambers.
That's a nice name.
Her mom finally cracked a smile. It made her look young again.
When you get a chance, bring her around. I'd love to meet her.
I will.
Hope she likes kids. Trisha stood up and grabbed her keys.
The lasagna's in the oven and Kid is over at her friend's house. She said she'd be home by 8. Do you want a day off on Sunday? I can't take the kids anywhere where I'll have to watch them, but I can stay here and study with them while you get some rest or go out.
We'll see. I might have to cover some rounds. You should get going.
Okay.
Trisha crossed the room and hugged her mother.
Love you.
Her mother squeezed her back. Love you too. Trisha knew she was doing the best she could, and it was more than most, but she still felt guilty as she let her mom go and slipped out the door. Her mom had forgiven her for basically running away from home and staying away, but Trisha hoped that things between them would be normal one day. The first time they held hands, they ran into Cammie. They were leaving class. They had a plan. Trisha was going to drive Alexis to her car. Then Trisha was going to follow her back to her house where they would eat lunch and then see where the next 4 hours took them before Trisha had to go to work. The first part was going better than well. They left class and made their way toward the parking decks. Trisha was asking about the texts Alexis had sent the afternoon before, and just as they crossed the central quad, Trisha slid her fingers along Alexis's hand. Alexis's heart pumped the same way it had when they'd kissed in the laundromat. This time, though, Alexis felt an odd sense of pride and excitement. They hadn't talked about being girlfriends or liking each other again, but by holding her hand, Alexis thought that Trisha was saying she wanted to be seen with her. Alexis had no idea what that felt like. To be wanted, to not be a source of embarrassment or shame, until that very moment. Also, they were touching. It was hard only seeing Trisha every other day and worse when they had to keep their hands to themselves during class. But now, they were touching. Alexis gave Trisha's hand a little squeeze, adjusting her fingers so they interlaced in a snugger fit. People were looking at them, but for once, Alexis didn't mind being stared at. And then they ran into Cammie.
Hey,
Cammie said as she not so smoothly looked at Alexis and Trisha and their hands. Hey. Cammie stared some more.
Hey.
Sorry. Trisha, this is Cammie. Cammie, Trisha. Things didn't need to be more awkward. They greeted each other nicely, thank God, but Cammie still had an expectant look on her face, like Alexis had more explaining to do. But she didn't. Finally, Cammie shook her head and smiled.
Yeah. I was going to text you. A bunch of us underclassmen on the team are going out tomorrow night. I wanted to see if you wanted to come. You both can come.
Cammie blinked and looked at their hands again. Alexis prayed Trisha wouldn't let go.
I have to work,
Trisha said politely.
Oh, well, Lex, you should come. It'll be fun.
Yeah, I'll go, I guess. Just text me.
Okay, cool. Well...
She looked at their hands again like they were going to do some bizarre magic trick.
I'll text you tomorrow when we figure out where we're going.
Alexis said cool again, and then finally Cammie headed off to her next class. They kept walking toward their cars. Should I know something, or... Trisha asked. That was the not cool situation, the one I texted you about.
Oh, her? What happened?
We used to be friends, kind of, and then some stuff happened last year and she stopped talking to me.
Oh.
Trisha made a face as she glanced over her shoulder at Cammie's back.
You're gonna hang out with her?
It's not the way it sounds. I did something. She just didn't know how to deal with it.
Should I ask for more details, or just let this one go?
I'll tell you sometime, but not today. I want to hang out today. We can talk about messy, depressing stuff later.
Good deal. I have loads of my own crap to share with you. Some other day we'll deal with it.
Trisha pulled her closer, wrapping both her hands around Alexis's palm. It was another hot day, but Alexis didn't mind at all. She liked the spike in temperature between them. The Chambers' house was fucking huge, a mansion compared to Trisha's or her mom's place, but that didn't faze her. She had figured Alexis came from a little money from the looks of the bridal party that had shown up in the club that night and the nice car that Alexis drove. But it was more than the obvious flow of cash that put Trisha a little on edge. It was the family that freaked her out a bit. As Alexis showed her around, it became more and more obvious that to be a Chambers was to be an achiever. The shelves of the living room were lined with plaques and statuettes and
We are delighted to bring you an extraordinary offer. Purchase through us and get any audiobook of your choice for a mere $2.99.
trophies. Photos of Alexis and her sister, from soccer-playing toddlers to high school graduates, filled the walls. A quick peek in the office her parents shared showed various diplomas and more awards. Alexis's bedroom was more of the same, clean and white like the rest of her house, though her room had accents of green. They passed guest rooms with hints of blue, and her sister's room had bits of yellow. But yeah, Alexis had trophies and plaques. Her high school diploma was framed too, right over her desk. Trisha thought of her own GED certificate. It was rolled up in a file folder in a lockbox under her bed with the rest of her important papers. Trisha's mom had finished school, and even when her dad died, her mother had done everything to give Trisha a future. She'd never wanted for anything, and her mother had never let her feel like she was missing anything. But being in the Chambers' house pointed out the obvious differences in their upbringing. She knew that people were people and money didn't make up for character, but the Chambers family had a lot of money, and combined with their obvious accomplishments, all of the abundance was a little intimidating. She didn't worry about what Alexis thought about her being a stripper, but something told her that Dr. and Mrs. Chambers might not be down with it. Though when Alexis started to move over toward the bed, Trisha figured she'd worry about keeping up with the rest of the Chambers crew some other time. That anxiety was immediately replaced with something else. A tingle low in her stomach that they would have to handle soon. Trisha didn't want to spook Alexis, so she moved over to her bookshelf. There she saw the music stand parked in the corner, mounted with sheet music. She spun around and found Alexis sitting on her bed now, looking back at her.
You said something about a violin?
Here, I'll show you. Alexis crossed the room and opened the double doors to her massive closet. Trisha followed her, slinking down to the floor as Alexis closed them in. The space was filled with clothes, of course, and shoeboxes and other things, but Alexis had made a perfect little space, complete with a thick area rug for them to sit on. She reached under a rack of clothes and pulled out her violin case. Classical or contemporary? Alexis said as she tucked the instrument under her chin. Trisha thought for a moment.
Surprise me.
Okay. You might know this one. Feel free to drop the beat. Alexis finally smiled, and Trisha could only think about how beautiful she was. In response, Trisha giggled a bit but nodded. Then Alexis started to play. Trisha knew the song right away, a ballad from Beyoncé's most recent album. It had been a long time since she'd heard live violin music. The last time she'd been walking down Sunset with the K's, and a man had been playing for tourist dollars on the corner. There had been so much other noise. Cars, people talking and shouting to each other, bus engines, and fake superheroes offering their pictures for $10 a pop. Hearing Alexis play was so different. In that tight space, the sound trapped by the fabric hanging around their heads and shoulders, Trisha felt like she was forced to absorb every note. She liked the way it felt. She didn't have Alexis's skill, but she had a voice. She picked up the verse in the right spot, and before she knew it, her eyes were closed and she was singing along. Not too loud, but in harmony with the notes Alexis was swishing off her bow. They worked well together. Trisha didn't sing the whole song, but Alexis kept playing. She finished the song and then went right into another one. Trisha didn't interrupt her, not even to ask her the name of the third song she bled into.
Instead, she curled up on her side and laid her head on a loose sweatshirt she found on the closet floor. She watched Alexis as her fingers guided the bow across the instrument. A million things crossed through her mind. She knew parts of Alexis, parts she loved, like her shy demeanor that came with a really soft touch. But she wanted to know everything. She wanted to know when she'd first picked up that violin. She wanted to know what else Alexis really loved. She wanted to know what else brought the calm happiness she saw on her face now. And she wanted to kiss her again. She waited, though. She knew not to interrupt a master at work. Eventually, the last song came to an end. Alexis set her violin back in its case, and then she leaned back against the door, turning all her attention to Trisha. "So that's what I do in my closet." Instead of asking what else she did in that closet of hers, Trisha kissed Alexis. Careful not to bump the violin or its case, she climbed up on her knees, placing her hands on Alexis's knees. She felt Alexis's weight shift, ready to support them both, just as their lips touched. Trisha didn't know what she was doing. The last few years of her life had been so weird, so full of necessary struggles and bizarre interactions with customers in the club. She knew she could handle most anything herself, and she had. Still, that didn't ever stop her feeling like she was walking on uneven, muddy ground in 6-inch platforms. Things with Alexis felt strangely level. When she was with Alexis, things felt good. When Alexis's hands slid up to her waist, Trisha moved closer, working her way to straddling Alexis's lap. They held each other, kissing and kissing like they had that afternoon in the laundromat. Trisha's whole body responded the same way it had that afternoon. Her pussy started to hurt. Her tits ached. But they were alone now and they could do more. Apparently, she wasn't the only one who felt that way. Alexis pulled back and looked her in the eye. They both tried to catch their breath. "When we kiss like that?" "Yeah?" "It makes me want to have sex with you," Alexis said bluntly. "Like, I can't really think about anything but touching you. Or you touching me." "Until I come?" Alexis nodded and let out a little breath as her chest quickly rose and fell. "Yeah. Me too." Trisha had always thought her first time would be in the club. In her head, she'd thought that one day someone would come in, someone she really clicked with. She'd be all hyped up just coming down from the pool, and then things would go a little too far during a lap dance. But there would be no consequences, no aftermath. Her fantasy always ended before her imagination would conjure up the details of what fucking a patron would really involve. She'd never imagined she'd meet someone like Alexis. She'd never thought she could meet someone bashful and reserved and like them this much. But she did. So much that she actually sighed when Alexis shifted their position so they ended up lying on the closet floor. Things moved so fast but in a natural way. 1 second they were kissing, still kissing, and then Alexis's hips were snuggled between Trisha's legs. She started moving, feeding off the pressure and friction of her jeans and her underwear rubbing up against her clit. It felt awesome, but it wasn't enough. Trish reached between them and went for the button on Alexis's jeans. Alexis caught on. She sat back and then quickly stood up and yanked off her pants. Trisha did the same, pulling down her tight jeans. Alexis assisted the rest of the way, pulling the snug fabric off her feet. Alexis was on top of her again, and they were kissing. Trisha thought she'd be good at this, but now she couldn't even think. Everything was happening so fast. Their lips mashed together, both of their hands groping wildly. It was all so sloppy and clumsy. Trisha knew it, but she didn't care. She just wanted her body near Alexis's, like this, for as long as possible. Her hand slid between their stomachs just as Alexis grabbed at her tit. She was still wearing her shirt and her bra, but it felt so good. Trisha started to sit up and Alexis followed, their bodies still fused together at the mouths. Trisha reached for her own shirt, hoping Alexis would do the same, but she just sat back long enough for Trisha to strip down to nothing but her boy shorts. Alexis didn't say anything as she stared back at her chest. "No fair," Trisha said, flashing Alexis a little smile. "You've seen me naked before." "Oh." Alexis looked down like she didn't realize that she still had any clothes on. "Do you want me to?" "Here, let me help you." Trisha moved onto her knees and shuffled a little bit closer. She grasped the bottom of Alexis's shirt, smiling a bit more to herself when Alexis raised her arms above her head like a little kid. She had a thick sports bra on underneath. That came off too. Alexis's nipples were dark, and the tips were hard. Just looking at them made Trisha wet all over again. She almost pounced on Alexis, kissing her like she was trying to kiss her face off. They ended up back on the floor, groping at each other again while they lay on their sides. This time it felt so much better, touching Alexis like that, skin to skin. Trisha moved so she was on top a little. Shifting so she could lick at Alexis's nipples, she shoved her hand in Alexis's underwear. Trisha might have made a noise. Something in her shivered or vibrated or cracked or something. Alexis was so wet, so slick between the soft hairs over her pussy. Trisha wasn't going to stop touching her until she came. The movements of her hand weren't delicate or smooth. Alexis seemed to like it that way. She made a little sound, something between a sigh and a cry of pain, but Trisha knew it meant more. Keep going. When Alexis's legs opened wider, Trisha said fuck it and climbed all the way on top of her, releasing her nipple and returning to her lips. The position was awkward, but it worked. Trisha's hand was still between them, still rubbing desperately against Alexis's clit and all over her pussy. Trisha's own clit was crushed against Alexis's leg. They kept kissing. Trisha knew she was going to come, but she wanted Alexis to come with her. She pulled back a bit, just enough to look at Alexis's face. "I'm gonna come," Trisha said, almost gasping for air. Alexis nodded, her hair mussing itself even more on the carpet. "Me too." She reached down and pressed Trisha's hand harder against her clit. That made Trisha come. She buried her face against Alexis's shoulder as she cursed and groaned. She was still coming, grinding her pelvis harder and harder against Alexis's thigh when she felt Alexis shudder against her. Trisha had heard jokes and rumors about how women didn't need breaks like men do. She hadn't realized how true it was until she felt she was done coming. Or not done coming at all. She was panting. So was Alexis. They were still wrapped around each other. Trisha brushed her mouth along Alexis's cheek, then kissed her again. And then Alexis's hands were on the backs of her thighs, pulling her on top, spreading her legs apart. Sometime before she came again, she wondered how long they'd been in the closet, and what time Alexis's mom would be home. The answer was more than 2 hours. It got hot and stuffy in there, and it smelled like pussy, but in that really good way. Still, they cracked the door to let some air in. After, they lay there on the little area rug on the floor. Trisha couldn't stop looking at Alexis. She didn't want to go to work. She just wanted to be there with her. She hoped Alexis felt the same way. "You have to date me now," Trish said. "I have to be your girlfriend. I don't give it up for non-girlfriends." She was joking, except not at all. Her heart paused as Alexis stared back at her. Trisha let out a nervous laugh. "Too soon?" I honestly never thought someone would like me." "But I told you I liked you the other day." Trisha leaned over and kissed her again. How could she not get it yet? "I know. I just don't believe it. I never thought someone would want me for a girlfriend." "Why?" "I don't know. I just didn't." "I hope you want to be with me like that." "I do." Alexis paused for a second and looked down toward Trisha's stomach before she looked her in the eye again. "I wish you didn't have to work tonight, or at all this weekend." "Is that a problem?" No, not like that. Just want to hang out with you more, that's all. I don't mind, really, I don't. I think it's cool, actually. You're such a good dancer." Trisha believed her. She had just been guessing when she'd told her mom that Alexis didn't seem like the jealous type. But the more time they spent together, the more convinced she became that Alexis genuinely seemed to see that Trisha had drawn a clear line between where Treasure stopped and where she began. "Me too. You can bring Cammy and her track friends by the club tomorrow if you want." Alexis twisted up her nose and Trisha had to laugh. "What, you don't want other people to know I strip?" "No, it's like, Cammy's not cool enough for you." That made Trisha laugh even harder. "I mean it. I guess I'll go out with them tomorrow, but I don't feel like you should have to put up with them just for me. – I'm not even 100% sure I want to kick up my friendship with Cammy again." You can come by and see me anytime you want. I can't give you free dances, but you can come through. I will sometime, just not tomorrow night. I'll come alone. I don't think Cammy and the track team need to see me coming in my pants while I watch you work. Trish climbed on top of Alexis and gave her most seductive straddle, treasure style. Did you come in your pants the last time you saw me working the pole? Almost, yeah. You're sexy. So are you. Trisha wanted to stay, but even without looking at her phone, she knew it was time to go. They got dressed, then Alexis walked her out to her car. They agreed to text each other throughout the weekend. Alexis said she'd stay up late if Trisha wanted to talk to her when she got off work. Trisha said she didn't have to, even though she did want to talk to Alexis as soon as she left the Luxor. They compromised. Trisha would text Alexis when she got home just to say goodnight, and then Trisha got to kiss her new girlfriend before she headed to work. She was still smiling when her mom called her cell. Trisha checked the screen, then hit accept. Hey. Hey girl, where are you? Just leaving Alexis's house, my friend I told you about. I'm gonna grab a bite so I don't pass out, then head to work. You off? Yeah, I looked up your Alexis Chambers on Facebook. Why, Mom? Oh my God. Trisha wasn't mad, just horrified. She hadn't even looked Alexis up on Facebook yet. She hardly even checked her own page. I told you the girls at the hospital made me get an account. Yeah, so you could connect with your friends from high school and find old guys to date. Thanks, baby. That's nice. But no, she's cute. I know her parents. How? I don't actually know them, but I know of her father, and I've seen her mother before. Her father is some big-time surgeon. Her mother's a do-gooder, all-about-town type. They seem like nice people. But? There's no but. Just be careful. Be careful how? She's not gonna knock me up, and she's not pushing Molly. You know what I mean, Trisha. I'm proud of you, okay? You know I am. I also love you more than anything, and I just know that all black folks aren't here for all other black folks. Her parents might be okay with her being with a girl, but they most likely are not looking for their daughter to be matched up with someone from our side of things. Trisha sighed. It was one thing to deal with her own doubt. It just sucked when other people, especially her own mom, lumped onto the pile. Yes, the Chambers family had money and status, but who gave a shit? Okay, maybe she did, but she didn't want that to get in the way of how things were going between her and Alexis. The buzz she'd felt from having Alexis between her legs, the high that was surging through her that came directly from the fact that she finally had a girlfriend. She finally had something nice with someone she really liked. She was completely squashed by the tone of her mother's voice. Do you have to say it like that? Trisha, do you want me to lie to you, or do you want me to be real with you? I want you to be real with me, but God, I like her, okay? Trisha felt like crying. I know. I'm sorry. I need you on Sunday. Can you come over and sit with the kids for a few hours? Yeah, I said I would. You have to work, or are you going to sleep for a bit? I have a date with an old guy I met on Facebook. Right. Alexis can come with you if she wants. She can hang out at the house. Okay. That actually made Trisha feel better. Alexis's family might not accept her, but at least her mom was already open to having Alexis around. She agreed to be at her mom's house around 10 in the morning. Hopefully, Alexis could come. Who knew what family stuff she had to do on Sunday morning? Chapter 6. She hadn't seen Trisha in almost a day, but Alexis still felt hot. It was like Trisha had plugged in an electrode under her skin the moment they'd met, and ever since, she'd been increasing the current, upping the voltage more and more to the point where now, even though she was nowhere around, just the thought of Trisha made Alexis's whole body tingle and vibrate. She just wished she had more time to enjoy these feelings. Her mom came home shortly after Trisha went to work. Then it was dinner with her parents, then a movie on TV with her mom's running commentary. She retreated to her room when the pressure became too much. She didn't like to think about Trisha in front of her parents. Trisha was this raw spot, new healthy skin that she needed to protect. But every time she thought of Trisha, she could feel herself reacting. Her skin started heating, or a smile popped up out of nowhere and she'd start to fidget. Then her mother would ask questions while her dad stared at her. just daring her to say something he thought was a little off so he could go on hating her. So she hid in her room for the rest of the night, too afraid to touch herself because she knew her mom would check on her. But she thought of Trisha as she watched TV on her laptop. She thought about Trisha until she fell asleep. In the morning, the goodnight text Trisha had promised was there. Alexis was sad she'd missed it, but she texted back, praying Trisha would answer before she had to get on with her day. She didn't get a reply before she and her mom left to pick up Sasha. Today it was furniture shopping and lunch. Her dad was golfing with his powerful black men clique, so it was time for the Chambers ladies to make a day of it. Usually Alexis was okay with these outings. She wanted to see her sister, and her mom seemed more at ease with her when Sasha was around. But things were different now. There was Trisha now. She needed more time to process the newness of wanting to feel, but family called. She walked beside her sister as she and her mom gabbed about married life. Alexis turned everything they said into a scenario about Trisha.
Michael's mom told me.
I wonder what Trisha's mom is like. I tried that recipe. I haven't even asked her about her favorite food.
He's threatening to get a dog.
Does Trisha like animals? I bet she's a dog person too. Then Alexis imagined her being tackled by a bounding gang of puppies, little black labs making Trisha giggle and smile that made Alexis's knees wobbly. And then she thought of her naked. She thought of them touching in her closet, and she had to slow down. Her head was starting to spin. Alexis had had a vision of what sex was in her mind. It was something you do, something you're supposed to do if you're normal. Something to check off to achieve a certain level of coolness and respectability and adulthood. She'd always thought sex was something she would suffer through, battling her embarrassment in herself and her body until the deed was done. But when it went down with Trisha, it was nothing like the task she'd dreamt it to be. It was... Alexis looked up because her mom was looking at her with this odd smile on her face. She was trying to comfort Alexis. She knew Alexis still struggled with anxiety, but for some reason the look annoyed her. She wanted to tell her mother she was fine. She had someone now. Sasha broke up the tension.
I should have done this before I moved in.
Oh, that wouldn't have worked. You don't know the horrors of a man's place until you actually live with him.
Mommy, he had the place cleaned while we were away, but I'm still finding gross, weird stuff in bizarre places.
That won't stop, but at least you can find gross, weird stuff under a new couch. How about this one? Sasha plopped down on one of the floor models of a sectional sofa.
Lex, sit with me.
Alexis looked up from the floor when her sister patted the cushion of the couch they were checking out. Alexis sat down and ran her hand over the textured fabric.
Does this place do same-day delivery?
Sasha asked their mom. That's a good question, she replied as she looked around. Does anyone even work here? You two keep looking, I'm going to find someone. Their mom turned and marched further into the mega store. It's nice, Alexis said.
Not sure about the color. We need something darker. How are things going with you?
Sasha asked. Good.
School's going well?
Yeah, it's actually been kind of easy. I feel like I can focus now.
Good.
Sasha reached over and squeezed her hand.
I'm glad you're here.
Alexis knew what Sasha meant. She felt it. Alexis had wanted all the noise in her life to go silent. She didn't want to put up with the horrible things that sometimes still banged around in her head. She had never really given a lot of thought to how her parents would have felt if she'd succeeded in what she'd tried to do the previous year. But she knew her sister would have missed her a lot. Still, Alexis changed the subject. I have a girlfriend.
What?
Sasha sprang forward on the cushion.
Since when?
Yesterday.
Lex. Oh my God, Lex. This is huge. Tell me all about her.
Alexis didn't know if she should, but she trusted her sister not to say anything or make it weird. Her name is Trisha, and she's in my computer class. The new friend I mentioned before. We started dating.
And you said you weren't sure she liked you. This is so cute. Lex has a girlfriend. Tell me more.
She has her own place.
Nice.
Alexis blurted the next part out, tore the Band-Aid right off. And she's a stripper.
One of the strippers from your bachelorette party, to be exact. Alexis sank into the couch and started fiddling with the leather cuff she had on. Please don't freak out.
I'm not freaking out. Okay, so she's a stripper, but she's in school. Plenty of strippers pay their way through school.
I mean, even if she wasn't in school, I would still like her. They would have never seen each other again, but that was just a minor detail.
Right, of course. Which one was she? I was kinda drunk that night.
The one who asked you my name. Sasha leaned back and squinted at the industrial ceiling of the store.
I think I remember. She was cute.
Yeah, she is.
You're blushing and smiling. You really like her. Aw, Lex.
Yeah, I like her. I want you to meet her, like, during the day and stuff, but I don't think it's time to do the meet the family thing yet. We haven't really talked about it, and I don't know how much she'd want Mom or Dad to know about the stripper thing.
Are you cool with it?
Yeah, it just sucks that she has to work at night. Tonight I'm gonna hang out with some girls from school, but I wish Trisha could come with us.
Yeah, that's tough. Eek! Lex, I'm glad you have a girlfriend, and I'm glad you like her, and I'm glad you're smiling. And you're being social. I told you things would be okay.
Thanks, Sash. You know what I am worried about? Dad. I don't think he'll take it too well. Sasha leaned closer and lowered her voice.
He doesn't have to know, you know. You think I tell Dad everything? You think Mom tells Dad everything? He might trip over you having a girlfriend, but that's his problem. Everything else, though? You're 18 now. Yeah, you're still under Dad's roof, but he can't make that decision for you anymore.
Alexis hadn't thought of that. She was afraid of her father in a lot of ways. Afraid to upset him, afraid to disappoint him even more. He would not approve of her dating Trisha. She knew it.
Remember Todd Grayson?
Sasha asked. Yeah?
That's who Dad wanted me to marry.
You hated Todd.
I know, and we never even dated, but the good doctor thought Todd would be an excellent provider. As if Michael is living in a box or something.
We are buying him new furniture.
Shut up. Michael's buying me furniture so I can stand to live with him forever. You know he has a nice place, but the furniture? No.
So, you think it's okay?
Yeah, it's very okay. What do you think of this one?
Sasha rocked back and forth a few times on the cushion. Alexis needed the empty spot next to her. It's a little too firm. It feels like a waiting room couch, not a watching movies and cuddling with your husband couch.
You're right. On to the next one.
Sasha stood and tugged Alexis off the sofa.
And you can tell me more about your girl before Mom comes back.
That night, Alexis had dinner with her mom and her sister. Then Sasha helped her get ready for her night out with Cammie and her friends. She wanted to wear something loose, baggy jeans and some sneakers, a white tee. Sasha braided her hair and did her makeup. She grabbed a neon green sweatband that matched the bits of color on her sneakers, then drove over to campus. But not before her mom and her sister made a big fuss about her going out for the first time with her college friends. They didn't know how much time she'd been spending out with Trisha, so she left that alone. She also didn't argue when her mom asked her to call or be home by 2. A curfew seemed unfair, but she doubted she'd want to stay out with Cammie and her friends all night long anyway. Alexis had been with them for 20 minutes, and already she wasn't sure she'd make it to 10 o'clock, let alone 2 a.m. She met Cammie, her roommate, and 2 girls from the track team over at the freshman dorms. The roommate, this tiny, mousy black girl from Colorado named Pauline, was cool. They were actually in the same bio lecture, though they hadn't spoken to each other. Cammie had texted Alexis, saying Pauline was tagging along because she was having a hard time making friends. Alexis understood. The other 2 girls, Terry and Christina, were chill. They were both black and in great shape, taller than Cammie but not as tall as Alexis. They just wanted to talk about track and all the friends they'd already made. Alexis sat on the bed with Pauline, watching them go back and forth for that whole 20 minutes. Finally, Cammie remembered she was there.
What should we do tonight?
She asked, looking Alexis's way like she had a suggestion. Alexis thought they had plans. She thought she was tagging along. Let's go to the Kappa party. Will and James invited the whole team, Terry said.
They mentioned the party at practice, but they didn't invite the whole team.
Cammy replied. But Christina was on Terry's side for this one.
We should go.
And so was Pauline.
Yeah, let's go to the party.
Then Cammy looked at Alexis like she was the deciding vote, like they weren't already outnumbered. Alexis gave a non-committal shrug even though she didn't want to go. We can check it out. That was enough to get them amped and out the door. They walked across campus to the Greek housing. The whole street seemed to be holding some sort of party behind closed doors, but as Christina explained as they walked up the steps to the Kappa house, it was illegal to have alcohol out on the street, so everyone kept their parties pretty contained. They made it 2 steps into the house before 2 older girls on the track team swept through the crowd. One of them glared at Terry and Cammy. Alexis stood there, eyeing their little standoff. She couldn't really hear what the older girls were saying over the music, but she caught a few words about making Cammy, Christina, and Terry fetch drinks. The rest was clear from their body language. They weren't welcome at this party. She almost felt bad for Cammy. Almost. This kind of hazing was stupid and childish, but she had a feeling Cammy and the other girls had no—
We are delighted to bring you an extraordinary offer. Purchase through us and get any audiobook of your choice for a mere $2.99.
This would happen, but they'd wanted to try the party anyway. Alexis made up her mind then. She was going to leave. She didn't care what Cammy and her track buddies were going to do, but hanging around while they begged and bargained just seemed stupid. Alexis tapped her on the shoulder. Cam.
No, it's fine, Lex. We'll go.
That wasn't what Alexis had been getting at, but okay. Cammy turned first and Alexis followed her out of the house. Back out on the street, Terry looked like she was about to cry. That was embarrassing.
That was bullshit,
Cammy said. Pauline asked the next logical question.
What do we do now?
Alexis knew exactly what she wanted to do. She wanted to see Trisha, but she wasn't exactly sure she should invite them along. She had the open invite to come by the club, but her thoughts on Cammy and her friends hadn't really changed. Trisha was too cool for them, and Treasure would blow their minds. But before she could think about it any further, Alexis opened her mouth. How do you guys feel about strip clubs? The Luxor Lounge was packed, which made sense since it was a Saturday night. Luckily, since the club didn't serve alcohol, they were all of legal age to get in. Alexis's heart was in her throat as she handed the bouncer her ID. Please don't get mad. Please don't get mad. The bouncer waved them through, and Alexis exhaled as the wave of music and the smells of sweat and cologne hit her in the face. Cammy and her friends were chattering behind her, but Alexis had one thing she had to do before she could get into the festivities with them. She had to find Trisha. She had to let her know she was there. Like last time, 2 girls greeted them before they got halfway across the floor.
Can we get you something to drink?
The shorter one asked. She was the tiny white girl Alexis remembered seeing on the pole. The other girl had helped pull Trisha away for their trip to the private room. She'd know where Trisha was. Alexis ignored the drink invitation and leaned down to talk into the girl's ear. I'm looking for Trisha. I mean Treasure. The girl's eyebrow went up. She just got off the pole. Is she expecting you? Maybe people didn't ask for her by her real name very often. Alexis gulped. Please don't let her be mad. No, but if you can tell her that Alexis is here, please. Oh, you're Alexis? Right, the new boo. Sure, she's probably changing, but let me go tell her. Thanks. Angel will grab you guys some sodas. The white girl, Angel, smiled and waved for them to follow her. There were no seats near the stage, but there was a table open in a little alcove along the back wall. Who are we waiting for? Terry asked. Alexis knew how ridiculous she was about to sound, but she told the truth. My girlfriend. She ignored their stares and watched the direction the other girl had just disappeared to. A few seconds later, Trisha's friend came back, almost skipping across the floor in her platform heels. Did she seem mad? Alexis asked. Please don't be mad. Mystic, that was her name, shook her head, waving Alexis's fear off. No, she'll be right out. She slid into the booth and cozied up beside Christina.
So, what brings you ladies out tonight?
Alexis stared down the door to the back room and let Christina explain her version of how they'd ended up on the other side of town. Nothing cooler than getting kicked out of a party. Finally, Trisha appeared from a door near the restrooms. She looked a little pissed at first and kind of confused, but as soon as she saw Alexis, Trisha smiled. Alexis smiled back. Trisha made her way across the club, pausing to politely blow off a guy who caught her hand when she tried to slip by his chair. She looks so good, Alexis thought to herself as Trisha got closer and closer. She was back in her tall heels, wearing scraps of silver and black that just barely covered her important bits. Alexis didn't really think. She just stood and Trisha walked right into her arms. The kiss they shared was an automatic thing, too. Trisha had on this thick lip gloss, but Alexis didn't care. She was kissing her girlfriend. Trisha pulled away and wiped Alexis's bottom lip with her thumb.
Sorry, got that shit all over you. What are you doing here?
Plans didn't really work out. Is this cool?
Yeah, of course. I'll hang with you for a little, but then I'll have to work the room for a while.
Trisha asked Mystic to go check on the guy who'd tried to stop her, then slid into the booth and snuggled close up to Alexis. Under the table, Alexis took her hand. Alexis introduced her around the table, doing her best not to laugh at the look on Cammie's face. This wasn't the Trisha she'd met before.
I thought you guys had plans tonight, she asked Cammie and Alexis. What happened?
Alexis nodded to Cammie. She could explain. Cammie shrugged, looking rightfully embarrassed.
We thought we could get into this party, but we got kicked out.
Just then, Angel came back balancing 5 sodas and handed them around the table. She winked at Pauline, who blushed like crazy and tried to hide her face. Alexis had to laugh a little. Alexis sat back as Trisha charmed Cammie and her friends. She wasn't on. This wasn't treasure talking. It was Trisha. Sweet, warm Trisha talking just as if they were in the common cafeteria on campus between classes. The way she laughed, the way she encouraged Pauline to talk more about herself. That was all Trisha. Alexis thought maybe Treasure was a figment of her imagination, a gateway persona that had made it possible for them to meet. This was Trisha. This was the girl she was falling for. After a while, though, she had to excuse herself and get back to work. They were paying for their drinks, but Trisha wasn't going to cover a night's paycheck sitting with them talking. She kissed Alexis on her cheek. Stay. Alexis pulled back, biting her lip as she nodded, as if that would stop the tingling between her legs. Trisha was so hot.
It doesn't bother you?
Christine or Terry asked. Alexis didn't care. She wasn't really paying attention. She answered anyway. Nope.
I think it's cool, Pauline said. I wish I could move like that.
Alexis peeled her eyes off Trisha's butt and looked at the girl who was on the center stage. She was good. They hung in the booth for a while. Periodically, 1 or 2 of them would peel off and toss a couple dollars on the stage. They might have been thrown by the fact that Trisha and Alexis were together, but it was obvious they were having a good time, especially when Cammie disappeared to the ATM by the door for the second time. Alexis kept their seats safe. A few of the girls approached her to offer her drinks and private dances, but she was too focused on watching Trisha pull in some cash. She'd thought she would be jealous now that things were different between them, but she wasn't. It didn't bother her seeing Trisha work the floor, flirting with various guys and sitting on their laps. It didn't bother her to see her flirting with the other girls who swarmed the room with her. She knew it was all part of the job. It didn't even bother her when she joined Mystic and another girl who called herself Sparkle back on the stage. The 3 of them put on a serious show, grinding on each other, climbing the pole and writhing on the floor together. Their performance got the crowd really riled up. Just as they finished, Alexis went over to the ATM, praying the withdrawals showed up as something generic on her account statement, and hoping to God her mom wouldn't check. After a show like that, she knew there would be a line to get a lap dance or some time in the VIP room with Trisha as soon as she hit the floor again. She palmed the cash and made her way back past the DJ booth close to the dressing rooms. Trisha came out a few minutes later and almost walked right into her.
Oh hey, what's up?
Can I get a private dance?
What?
Trish looked down at the 20s in Alexis's hand. Then she made a face.
No, here.
Trisha turned them around and steered her back toward the booth.
Wait here a sec and then meet me in the ladies' room in 2 minutes.
Before Alexis could argue or ask why, Trisha took off for the other side of the club. Trisha talked to a few people as she made her way through the room. Alexis stopped watching her and went to the bathroom. One of the strippers was at the sink checking her makeup. She smiled at Alexis, sizing her up as a candidate for a lap dance just as the door swung open. It was Trisha. She shared a look with the girl at the sink. The other girl glanced at Alexis, then back at Trisha.
You want me to watch the door?
She offered with a bit of a smile.
Roxy's got it,
Trisha replied.
Okay.
The other girl shrugged, then made a show of brushing by Alexis as she swept out the door. Alexis almost expected Trisha to say something about it, but instead Trisha flipped the lock on the door, and then she backed Alexis against the sink.
It's frowned upon, but there are ways around the rules.
Trisha went right for her belt and undid the buckle. Then she unzipped Alexis's jeans. Why didn't we just go into the back room?
Because I'm not charging you $80 to make out with my own girlfriend. You like the sound of that, don't you?
Trisha added when Alexis smiled. Yeah, I missed you today. I told my sister about you. Trisha stopped just as she slid her hands down the front of Alexis's briefs. Alexis stopped breathing.
What did she say?
She wants to meet you.
My mom looked you up on Facebook, but can we talk about this later?
Yeah.
We have like 5-10 minutes max before someone comes looking for me or tries to use the bathroom.
Alexis groaned as Trisha's fingers found her clit. Yeah. Oh my God, yeah.
Just relax.
Alexis swallowed and blinked. Trisha slid down into a squatting position, taking Alexis's jeans and her underwear with her. Alexis almost told her to stop. She didn't think this would happen like this, and she didn't want Trisha to think she had to go down on her for any reason. She reached down and rubbed the side of Trisha's head. You don't have to do this.
You think I don't want to? This is all I've wanted to do since you showed up.
No, I just... Alexis didn't know what she thought. Trisha's mouth was between her legs. Alexis's knees buckled, but she grabbed the edge of the counter. She looked down and couldn't believe what she was seeing. She couldn't believe what she was feeling. Trisha's tongue was going right for it, digging between her lips, searching out her clit. She didn't want to mess up Trisha's hair, so she gripped the countertop harder, thinking she was going to break a nail on the rough plaster underneath. It felt so good, amazing, but Alexis felt like something was missing. They didn't have much time, and she didn't want to spend the few moments they could steal together with Trisha down on her knees. She reached down and pulled Trisha up. Trisha was panting, short of breath from the effort she was putting into getting Alexis off. Trish licked her lips and wiped the side of her mouth as she looked up at Alexis with her big eyes. It was the sexiest thing ever.
What's wrong?
Nothing. I just want to kiss you.
Then kiss me.
So they kissed, and while they were kissing, Trisha slid her hand back between Alexis's legs. Alexis didn't stop her. Her fingers felt too good. Alexis let her own hands explore the soft skin of Trisha's sides, her back, her chest. She pulled the top of her silver and black stringy thing to the side and gently teased Trisha's nipple, sighing herself when Trisha moaned. Alexis came in no time, hugging Trisha to her as she shivered against her fingers. She stood there awkwardly for a moment, trying to remember where she was before she pulled her pants back up. Trisha fixed her top and fluffed out her hair. This was a bad idea, Alexis said.
Why?
Because I want to spend the rest of the night with you, but you're not done working and I have to drive Cammy and them back to campus.
How about tomorrow? You want to come babysit with me at my mom's house? We can study and things.
The smile on Trisha's face gave promise to the things. Yeah, I'm supposed to have brunch with my parents, but I'll skip that. Someone tried the bathroom door, gave it a good shake. Their time was up. Trisha kissed her again before she flipped the switch, then casually strolled back onto the strip club floor. Alexis joined Cammy and Pauline back in the booth. Terry was in front of the stage on the lap of some skinny light-skinned guy who was throwing his dollars at the girl working the pole. Christina was nowhere in sight. She reappeared a few minutes later, holding hands with Mystic as they walked out of the VIP room. Cammy looked a little annoyed when Mystic dropped Christina back at the booth with a kiss on the cheek, but Alexis knew to stay out of it. They stayed until the club closed. Trisha was stuck trying to peel away from her last customer, but Alexis caught her attention and made a texting motioning with her thumbs. Trisha nodded and gave her a little smile and a wave behind the guy's back. Christina, Terry, and Pauline wouldn't stop talking, first about the girls, then about how cool Alexis was for taking them there. They loved Trisha too, and maybe Christina had developed a little crush on Mystic. She denied it, but it was obvious. Cammy didn't say a word. Even when she dropped them off in front of the dorm, Cammy grumbled her goodbye and power-walked ahead of Pauline and swiped her card in the door. It was just before 2 when Alexis left campus. She thought about calling her mom and telling her she'd be home in a little while, but there was no point in waking her parents up when she knew she'd be walking through the door in 20 minutes. The house was quiet when she got home, but the kitchen light was on. So was the light in the upstairs hallway. Alexis washed up quickly in her bathroom, then settled into bed, determined to hear from Trisha at least once before she fell asleep. The text came just as her mom knocked on and simultaneously opened her door. Alexis hid her phone under her covers, then froze, staring at the sliver of light that hit her desk. "Honey?" "Yeah, Mom." "Did you have fun?" "Yeah. I think I'm going to campus to study with the girls tomorrow." "Okay." Mom sounded too relieved, but Alexis tried not to let it bother her. Her phone buzzed in her hand again. Her mom said goodnight and finally left Alexis alone with her texts. "Just getting home now. I want to stay up all night talking to you, but I'm wrecked." Just the mention of being exhausted made Alexis yawn. It was way past her bedtime. "Tomorrow?" she texted back. "Tomorrow. Thanks for coming to see me." Followed by a bunch of emoticons, 3 hearts, 3 kissing lips, and a smiley face blowing a heart from its mouth. Alexis sent back a few hearts of her own with her good night. She fell asleep thinking of what it felt like to have Trisha's hand between her legs. Chapter 7. Trisha knew why she was nervous, but she couldn't help it. She loved hanging out with Alexis, and after last night she couldn't wait to see her again. Really though, it was more than that. She'd spent a lot of time with a lot of girls, but never anyone like Alexis. It was her shyness that Trisha liked. It was the way that she seemed to be thinking all the time, considering everything. So many of Trisha's friends were so off the cuff, so impulsive. They had some good times, that was definitely true, but between the chaos of the club and the chaos of running around with the kids, spending time with Alexis was like finding this calming, quiet space where Trisha could power down and just be. It was addictive, this peace she'd found with her new girlfriend. Still, while she waited for Alexis to show up, all that ran through her mind was the possible way Alexis would react to the less glamorous parts of her life. Trisha knew the club had a certain allure. It was a walking fantasy come to life for a lot of people. Maybe even for Alexis. But watching 5 loud, hyper kids was something else. She did her best to clean the place up, but it still looked like a war zone. There were dishes in the sink and toys and shoes everywhere. Not to mention the whole place really needed a scrub up. Maybe that would be her Christmas present to her mom, a professional cleaning crew to make the grout shine again. She wondered how often the Chambers family had someone come through their place. No way Mrs. Chambers scrubbed that palace all by herself.
"What are you doing?"
Kara asked. She was busy bouncing on the couch even though Trisha had told her 6 times to sit down. Daryl and Dina were ignoring her, too focused on their cartoons. Kit was hiding in her room, doing some 13-year-old brooding. Kelsey had decided on a mid-morning nap in Sophie's bed. "I'm waiting for my friend. I already told you she's coming over today. Sit down." Kara jumped off the couch and started running laps around the couch and through the kitchen. With each pass, she slapped Trisha on the butt and yelped, "Boing!" Trisha knew it was wrong to trip an 8-year-old, but she was seriously considering it. Finally, Alexis's car pulled up. Kara stopped by the window when she heard the door slam and Alexis's alarm beep. Alexis climbed out of the car, looking sexy as usual. She was back in femme mode, wearing a tight light blue crew neck shirt, print crop pants, and silver strappy sandals. The braids she'd worn to the club were gone, and a messy high bun was in its place. Like always, she wore some adornment on her left wrist. This time it was a stack of silver bangles that matched her shoes. Trisha suspected the extremes had to do with Alexis's parents and what they were most comfortable with, but part of her wanted to ask. She wanted to know more about Alexis.
Is that your friend?
Kara asked. Yes. Trisha quickly turned and got Kara in a playful stronghold with her arms behind her back. Kara instantly started giggling.
Let me go.
No, you have to answer the door. It's the polite thing to do. Trisha carefully walked to the front door, nudging a giggling Kara forward with each step. The doorbell rang. Kay, open the door, Kay.
I can't.
Sure you can, just use your hands.
I can't. You have my hands.
Oh, right. Well, get out of the way so I can answer the door. She stepped in front of Kara and used the force of her butt to nudge her out of the way. She opened the door for Alexis. You look nice. Thanks. I came straight from brunch. I brought these for the kids. She held out a plastic bag from CVS. Trisha looked inside and smiled. It was filled with coloring books and crayons and candy. Perfect for this unruly bunch. I didn't know what they'd like, so I took a guess.
Can I see? Can I see?
Kara asked, shoving her head under Trisha's arm. You want to color? Trisha asked, making it sound like a bit of a threat.
Yes.
Well, go sit down. Kara took off for the TV room. Hey. Trisha perched up on her tiptoes, bracing herself with her hands on Alexis's hips, and kissed her on the lips. Alexis kissed her back, but her whole body was tense. Are you okay? Yeah. Alexis looked down between them like she was getting ready to share some real bad news, but instead she pulled Trisha closer. I have some anxiety issues. Just a little nervous about meeting the kids. And your mom. Oh, we can do this another time. Trisha didn't want her to leave, but she wanted Alexis to be comfortable. No, sorry. Just ignore me. As much as I'd love to ignore you, I don't think I can. Trisha kissed her again, and Alexis seemed to relax a little. She kissed her back with a little extra feeling, sliding an arm around her waist and dipping her tongue into Trisha's mouth. When they finally took a moment to breathe, Trisha could feel herself floating 3 feet off the floor. She opened her eyes, and Alexis was looking at her, like really looking at her, taking in her whole face, her eyes, her lips. Trisha didn't know when, but she knew one day she could love Alexis just from that look. She knew she could love Alexis easily. Is it okay if we do this in front of the kids? Alexis asked. Oh yeah, their other sitter is so gay. They hang with her and her partner all the time. They know all about Lady Love. Well, the G-rated version of Lady Love. Okay, good.
I'm sitting down,
Kara yelled from the other room. Yeah, she couldn't maul Alexis right that second. Trisha glanced at the clock. It was almost noon. Do you need to hit the books now, or do you just want to hang out for a little while? We can hang out. Trisha grabbed her hand and led her toward the TV room. I hope you like Teen Titans Go, 'cause that's what we're watching. She introduced Alexis to Daryl and Dina, who were nice enough to glance away from the TV to say hello. Kara had cleaned off the coffee table and was kneeling on the floor in front of the couch like she was waiting to be served a lavish meal.
I'm Kay. Can I have the bag?
Sure. Alexis almost handed it over before Trisha intercepted it and took out the coloring books and the crayons. Then she handed them to Kara. No way she was giving that child candy right now. Alexis looked between them for a second, but she got the message. No sugar for the already hyper kid. Trisha flopped down on the worn couch and patted the seat beside her. Alexis hesitated a moment, looking around the room, then at the couch. Then she finally sat down. Trisha chalked it up to her nerves and tried not to read into it. They settled next to each other and Trisha slid her arm under Alexis's. So last night, in the bathroom? She almost died from the look Alexis shot her. I'm kidding.
I was going to say, you want to talk about that now?
I do want to, but how about this?
Trisha reached into her back pocket and pulled out her phone.
I wanted more time with you last night.
She typed, and then she hit send. Alexis caught on and reached into her bag for her phone. Trisha peeked over as she read her screen but looked back at the TV until her phone beeped in her hand. She put it on low vibrate, then read the text. I wanted more time with you too. We need to spend more time alone, like in my closet.
My mom has a huge closet. Want to check it out?
Yeah, let's go hook up on top of your mom's shoes and personal records. When is she coming back?
A few hours. We're stuck with these little boogers until then.
Can I ask you something?
Yeah.
How did they end up with you? Trisha didn't mean to let out such an odd exhale, but she did. Alexis leaned over and murmured in her ear. Sorry, you don't have to talk about it.
No, it's okay. My godmother died when the twins were 3, the monster coloring over there and her sister. My mom didn't want the kids getting split up or ending up with crazy foster parents, so she took them.
That's pretty cool. Did I ruin the mood? Alexis sent, and then... Should I tell you that I dreamt about you last night? I dreamt about you naked.
What was I doing?
Teasing me.
Like this?
The kids definitely weren't paying attention, so Trisha grabbed her mom's sweatshirt off the arm of the couch and draped it over their laps. Then she shoved her hands between Alexis's legs. She shot her another message.
I can text one-handed.
Alexis blinked for a moment, then sighed. She gripped her phone and fired a message back. But before Trisha could read it, Alexis's free hand was under the sweatshirt, moving around her lap. She risked a glance at her phone.
You took care of me last night. Let me return the favor.
Is this how it's going to be? Returning favors?
Yes.
There was no way she was going to come. She couldn't with the kids in the room. But she didn't want Alexis to stop. Instead, she told her to slow down. It was enough just to have Alexis's hand where it was, nestled between her legs, pressing the seam of her jeans against her clit. Her whole body was burning. The attraction and the need that came with being near Alexis seemed to simmer in her gut. It boiled up around her chin, over her cheeks. All she could do was breathe and sigh and fight to swallow and text. Her heart thumped. She was glad she'd never fallen for anyone before Alexis, before she'd gotten on her feet and learned how to take care of herself. Her sense of responsibility kept her from ditching the kids to get Alexis naked again. The young, immature Trisha would have suggested they run away. She would have thought it was a great idea for them to skip out on school for a few weeks so they could find someplace comfortable and private to fuck around. Luckily, she knew better. A few times Alexis had to move her hand. Kara spun around to show them her work of art, and Kit emerged from her bedroom to announce that she was going to the park with her friends. Dina declared she was hungry and wanted to use the toaster oven because the microwave didn't cook her pizza bagels the right way. But once the kids settled, Alexis returned her hand right back to where it belonged. Until Trisha's mom came home. Chapter 8. It was a little after 3, and they still hadn't cracked a book open. Trisha's mom burst through the door in her typical fashion. Trisha tossed the sweatshirt. "If you want to eat, bring in the rest of the groceries," she called from the kitchen. Daryl, Dina, and Kara took that at face value and scrambled to find their shoes. Trisha's mom rubbed Daryl's head as he squirmed by her. "Don't let Kara carry too much." He mumbled his okay and kept it moving. Then Trisha's mom turned and gave Alexis a thorough once-over, hands on her hips and everything.
"This is my girlfriend, Alexis. Alexis, this is my mom, Sophie Hamilton."
Alexis stood and offered her hand. "It's nice to meet you." Her mom gave Alexis's hand a firm shake, then she resumed her defensive stance. "Nice to meet you, too." Trisha hoped she was just joking around. "So, Alexis, I have to ask you, what are your plans with my daughter?"
Mom, for real?
"Yes, I'm the mother. I get to interrogate."
Alexis cleared her throat, then glanced at Trisha before she looked back at her mom. We've only been hanging out for a little while, but I like her a lot, and I want to keep hanging out with her. And that's it? Not to be rude, Mrs. Hamilton, but I'm only 18, and right now I'm doing my best to focus on my grades. I don't think I'm too young, or we're too young to be in a serious relationship, but I do think I'm too young to say right now that we're going to be together forever. I am going to respect her, though, and be everything I can for her. We're figuring out how we feel about each other, but the most important thing is Trisha is my friend. A real friend. I've never had a real friend like her before. Trisha's mouth was actually hanging open. That may have been the most Alexis had ever said at once, and it was fucking perfect. Her mom's face softened, but Alexis wasn't done yet. So, I guess my plan is to keep spending time with her and hoping she wants to spend time with me. Also, our comp sci teacher has high hopes for us both. I'm hoping we can impress him together. Trisha stood and wrapped her arms around Alexis's waist and perched on her tiptoes so she could rest her chin on Alexis's shoulder. She tried not to laugh, but she did smile. Does that answer your question, Mom? Her mom glared at her for a moment before she rolled her eyes. Yeah. You're welcome here anytime, especially if you want to help with the kids and the cooking and the cleaning. Thank you. I can't cook, but I know how to fold laundry and run a vacuum.
We are delighted to bring you an extraordinary offer. Purchase through us and get any audiobook of your choice for a mere $2.99.
Both good skills to have.
Kit's down the street with her friends and Kelsey is napping in your bed, and I put some cash in the jar. We're going to take off if you don't need anything else.
Trisha said, reaching for her backpack. Alexis looked a little shocked, but she got with the program and picked up her own backpack.
There's some candy in that bag if you want to use it for a little bribery.
Her mom shook her head with a dismissive wave of her hand. Scram, I'll see you on Tuesday. They said their goodbyes to the kids, then Trisha led Alexis out to their cars. She still seemed a little confused. We could have stayed and helped out some more, Alexis said.
Nah, I'll explain when we get to my apartment. If you want to come over to my apartment, I promise we'll study.
Yeah, sure. I'll follow you.
'Kay.
Trisha leaned up and kissed her one more time for good measure. That was awesome, what you just said. Alexis shrugged. I was just being honest.
Come on.
Trisha nudged her toward her driver's side door.
I'm not too far from here.
They didn't do much studying. Alexis followed Trisha to her apartment in one of those forgotten neighborhoods between her mom's house in Inglewood and the packed-in mansions of Beverly Hills. She followed her to the second-floor unit Trisha called home, and after a quick glance at her sparsely decorated, sparsely furnished living room, she followed Trisha to her bed to finish the teasing they'd started on Mrs. Hamilton's couch. As they kissed and tore off each other's clothes, it finally clicked in Alexis's head that sex was something she could have now because she wanted it. Because Trisha wanted her. She also realized she'd have to get better at it, or at least good at it if she wanted to keep Trisha around. She had figured out the kissing just fine, and the humping and grinding didn't require any real skill. But when she found herself between Trisha's legs, with her face exactly where she'd imagined it for weeks, Trisha let her know immediately that there was such a thing as moving your tongue too fast and a little too hard. Trisha was patient with her, though, and told her exactly what was working and what wasn't. Alexis got her there with her fingers, which seemed to be more than okay with Trisha. But that was just the start of things. When she could think, Alexis worried that they wouldn't stop. There was too much of Trisha's body to explore. And then it was such a big deal that she felt so comfortable with someone touching her naked skin, she didn't want it to end. They kept at it. Slow, then fast. Eager, then lazy. It seemed to work best for them when they were face to face, kissing, rubbing against each other. There was more, but Alexis figured they could get more adventurous later. They stopped for a little while, just lying there on Trisha's rumpled sheets. Trisha's neighbor was blasting music. The thump of the bass seemed to work well with the buzz from Trisha's AC unit. A dust bunny flitted down to Trisha's hair, and Alexis wiped it away. Why did we leave your mom so fast? She asked. Our relationship is weird. I was really close with my godmother, especially after my dad passed away. When she died, I kinda lost it. I don't know what you're supposed to do in that situation. I guess I could have really been there for my mom, but I was too lost. When she took in the kids, I thought it would be better if I wasn't there. I was old enough to take care of myself. Or so I thought. How did you leave? Alexis asked like she was planning to make her own escape. In a way, she was. It was gradual. My friend Quenisha, Mystic, her mom let me spend the night all the time. When Regina died, I needed a place to, escape and cry. My mom was so busy getting things squared away with the kids. She didn't mind me being over there all the time. One day, she realized I hadn't been home for more than 5 minutes in a month. I know it sounds like she was a bad mom or something, but I was slick about it. And 5 young kids can be plenty to keep you occupied. I don't know. I took advantage of her grief a little. How'd you end up dancing? Quenisha and I wanted to get jobs to help out both our moms. I wanted to give Q's mom a little something for feeding me and letting me use her electricity, and I knew my mom was overwhelmed. We knew a girl who got a fake ID and started dancing at this place called Stardust. We tried it and it worked. After a few weeks, I dropped out of school. My mom didn't know until it was too late for her to do anything about it. I was 18. I'd saved up enough money to get my own apartment. I promised that I'd get my GED and at least get my associate's degree or some technical training. But she was pissed about the stripping even though the money helps a lot. She's still pissed. So you don't hang around her much? Nah, she always has something to say, but she'll always take the money. I know she just wants better for me, but I'm doing my best. I think she thinks she fucked up with me and then she's pissed because I lied. So we'll be talking and all that shit comes up and we start arguing. I get it, but yeah. You're doing a lot. I know. I think that's kinda how things are with my dad, but we talk even less. Trisha moved a little closer. Why? Because I'm not my sister, I think. Or a boy. He got 75% of a perfect family and I'm this mistake that's screwing up his African-American dream. But why? Has he heard you play the violin? Has he spent 2 minutes with you? Yeah, he has. I had a bad year last year and I think he hoped I was better than a breakdown. Tougher, more put together. That's ridiculous. Everyone has a bad time. Not in my house. Trisha was quiet for a few seconds. Alexis watched her while Trisha seemed to be thinking things over or maybe thinking about what to say next. Trisha exhaled, then quirked her lips to the side. What do you want to do? Who do you want to be? She asked. I don't know. Alexis admitted. She had no clue. Me neither. We'll be a traveling show. You'll play and I'll dance and we'll live off our earnings out of the back of my car. People will tell stories about us. Alexis pictured it. A street corner, her eyes closed, feeling the strings under her fingers and a small crowd gathered around, mesmerized by things that Trisha could do with her ass. The scenario was beautiful and absolutely terrifying. It wasn't real. I like the way you look at me, Alexis said. It just popped into her mind and it was the truth. I like looking at you. Can I ask you something? Can you take these off? Trisha laughed as she grabbed Alexis's wrist and held up her bangles. I can tell you have a thing for accessorizing on the left, but there's a lot of clanging going on when we're getting down. Alexis swallowed and tried not to freak out. Trisha had a real-world experience. She hadn't been sheltered like Alexis had. She could handle this. You okay? Trisha asked as Alexis pulled her hand back. She pulled off the bracelets and rolled to set them on the floor. Then she sat up, leaning against the wall where a headboard should have been, and showed Trisha her wrist. This was my bad time. Trisha propped herself on her elbow and gently ran a finger over the puckered skin. She looked Alexis in the eye. Tell me whatever you want. We can talk about it or we don't have to talk about it at all. I don't really want to talk about it. I'm not trying to keep it from you or anything. We're here. We're naked. We should probably hit the books soon. Why talk about it? Well, if you ever want to talk about it, I'll listen. And you don't have to cover this up for me, okay? Alexis actually blew out a sigh of relief as she nodded. Was seeing her therapist even necessary? Maybe she just needed the people in her life to give her some room to navigate this thing the way she wanted to. Maybe she just needed someone like Trisha to know when not to try to dig deeper. The song on the neighbor's boom-in system changed, and Trisha jumped up from the bed. "This is my shit." She started dancing at the foot of the bed, silly shimmies and gyrations, the complete opposite of what she'd done at the club. "Come dance with me," Trisha said. "I'm a shitty dancer." Trisha bent over and started shaking her ass, completely off beat. She looked ridiculous and so sexy at the same time. "Come on, you know you want some of this." Alexis started laughing. "I want all of dat to come back over here. You don't want to see me dance." "Fine." Trisha stopped mid-move and jumped back on the bed, sitting up on her knees with a burst of energy. Dancing really did something for her. "Should we study?" "No, but yeah." Alexis reached for her shirt and her underwear. She tossed Trisha's shirt at her head. "Put that on. I need to focus." "Since you asked nicely." Trisha slipped her shirt over her head and kissed Alexis while she groped her boob for a few minutes before she ran to get their bags. Over the next few days, it really sunk in. Alexis had a girlfriend she could hang out with and make out with and fool around with and study with. Over the next 3 weeks, she also realized that she had a best friend. It did suck having to deal with Trisha's work schedule, her obligations to the kids, and Alexis having to be around the house enough for her mom not to ask too many questions. But when they could be, they were together. At the library, at Trisha's, or at the laundromat. And even when they weren't together, they were talking or texting. Alexis loved that Trisha could be sexy and silly. She loved that Trisha seemed to pick up on when she was having a rough day, whether she was stressed from homework or if she had a particularly awkward run-in with her dad. She loved that Trisha was smart. Like, really smart. She got one of 3 100% on their first comp sci quiz, and Alexis caught a glimpse of one of the papers she'd gotten back. A flat A. Alexis was doing fine. A's and B's. She got a C on a bio test because she'd completely missed a section on the prep sheet, but her professor had told her not to worry. She had plenty of time to bring the C up. When their class schedules didn't match up, Alexis hung out with Pauline a bit. Pauline was really sweet and didn't mind awkward silences. She didn't see much of Cammie, or maybe Cammie didn't want to see much of her. There was some drama between Christina, Cammie, and Quenisha. Paulina mentioned it, but Trisha didn't bring it up. Alexis decided to blame Cammie's absence on her track schedule and let it go. Sasha was around less and less, but Alexis realized there were certain things she could tell Trisha that she couldn't tell her sister. Also, it was different talking to a girlfriend about sex stuff. Sasha asked about Trisha a lot, but Alexis was not going to give her sister the details of what they did at Trisha's apartment, or the details of what they were planning to do. Like now, they were texting about their sex toy needs. Alexis was sitting on the couch waiting for her mom to get home so they could go out to dinner. Trisha was at her mom's, sending Alexis pictures of harnesses she was threatening to buy for her. It was all her own fault. They'd had plenty of toy-free sex, and then one day, like a complete loser, she'd asked Trisha if she should get a strap-on. She'd said it in the dopiest way ever, and Trisha had burst out laughing, even though she'd admitted it might be a good idea. A picture popped up of a neon green felt contraption. "How about this one?" Alexis made a face to herself and shot a text back. "Nope. Looks like a Muppet training harness." "But I like the green." "Then buy it, but don't be mad at me if it rips in half, or tries to teach you your ABCs. "While I'm riding you?" Alexis squirmed. She liked it a lot when Trisha was on top. The kitchen door popped open and her mom called out. "Lexi Wex, are you ready?" Alexis called back as her fingers flew across the screen. "Yep." "How about this one?" A picture of a mannequin wearing a dildo strapped to its chin. Alexis snorted just as her mom came into the room. Alexis glanced up, but she didn't even bother to wipe the smile off her face. "Let me just get out of these clothes. This blouse has no give." "'Kay," Alexis said, even though it was more of a mumble. "Who are you talking to, honey?" "Huh? Oh, my friend, Trisha." Her phone lit up again.
Please.
This time a picture of a harness with a plug to be inserted in the pussy and another one into the ass. Alexis cocked her head, imagining how that all would work. Trisha explained a second later.
See, you fuck me, and then there's one in the pink and one in the stink for you.
Alexis covered her mouth, her laughter more of a sputter cough. Oh my God. She typed the same and added, "You did not just say that." "Honey?" "Yeah?" Alexis looked up again when her mom didn't go on. She didn't like the look she saw. It was part weepy and part hopeful, with a huge sprinkle of concern. "This Trisha, is she more than a friend?" Alexis knew this moment would come at some point, but she thought she would be the one to bring it up. She thought she and Trisha would be in a bold enough place to bring Trisha to her mother on her own. Not just Trisha, but herself. She was still trying to figure out why some clothes made her feel a certain way and some didn't. But she was very sure about just how gay she was. She was pretty sure about how she felt about Trisha. Neither of those things were going to change anytime soon. Alexis swallowed and sat up on the couch. Yeah, she's my girlfriend." Her mother's skill with public relations was never more obvious than at that moment. She didn't even flinch. "Why don't you have her over sometime? How about this Saturday? We have the DDR picnic on Sunday and I'll be baking pies for the sale all day. I know you like to help. Your friend Trisha can come over for lunch and we'll make some pies. How about that?" "That sounds cool. Let me ask her." "Okay." The smile her mom flashed seemed genuine, but it disappeared before she left the room. At least she was trying. The texting went on. "My mom knows you're my girlfriend. Do you want to run?" "No. But is it safe? Do I have to do community service or wear a church hat?" Yes, and no. She wants you to come over to bake pies with us on Saturday. The pies are for charity. Kinda. Is pie code for something else? I hope not. Do you want me to meet your mom? Yeah. 'Kay, I'll come. I'll meet your mom and then you can let me sample the pie. Ah, hee hee hee. 40 minutes later, Alexis was out to dinner with her mom at their favorite Italian restaurant. While they waited for their drinks, Alexis showed her mom a picture of Trisha she had on her phone. The pictures where Trisha was fully dressed. This time, the smile her mom flashed stuck around. She said Trisha was beautiful, and Alexis knew she meant it. Chapter 9. Trisha pulled up the Chambers' driveway and tried not to toss her cookies as she climbed out of her car. She'd shopped for this, actually gone to an Old Navy and then a Kohl's for the perfect outfit for the day. A blue petal collar blouse, and some flower print pants that matched the ones Alexis had worn the day she came to Sophie's. Quenisha's mom had put fresh tracks in her hair, some straight 14-inch Indian Remy with some ombre highlights. She'd toned down her makeup, and she'd even put on flats. She knew she was putting on a show for Alexis's mom, but it had seemed like the best way to go. Showing up in a cut-off Clippers tank top, skin-tight jeans, and the platform peep-toe boots she'd worn the day before wouldn't win Mama Chambers over. Alexis opened the front door before she could ring the doorbell. Trisha snickered when Alexis got a glimpse of her outfit. It was funny, but she clearly fit right in with the theme of the day. Alexis was actually wearing Bermuda shorts and a pink polo shirt. It was a preppy kind of Saturday. "Hi," Alexis said. "Hey, should I come in, or—" "Yes, but first just know that my dad is home. I thought he was going golfing with my sister and her husband, but Michael had to work and Sasha went to some wine tasting thing with her friend. So my dad's here." "Okay. So no tongue, no butt grabbing?" "Basically. I just didn't want you to be surprised if he comes walking through the kitchen looking grouchy." "Got it. Now let me in." To her surprise, Alexis leaned down and kissed her. It was quick, but it was a kiss nonetheless. "I'm glad you came. Today is going to be miserable." "We'll make it. Come on, let's bake some pies." Trisha grabbed Alexis's hand and dragged her toward the kitchen where Alexis's mom was waiting for them with a whole lot of pie baking supplies. "You must be Trisha," Mrs. Chambers said as she came around the marble counter. She hugged Trisha, then held her out at arm's length to get a better look at her. It was like something out of a TV show. Mrs. Chambers was very beautiful in person, and even though it was pretty damn obvious that her pleasantness was rehearsed, she seemed very nice. Trisha smiled back.
It's nice to meet you.
Are you girls ready to bake? You say it like we have a choice. Alexis muttered. Oh, hush. Trisha, don't listen to her. Every year she acts like she hates doing this, and every year she's up all night with me preparing the dough. You bake?
Not much recently, and never from scratch.
Trisha laughed a little, trying to keep things light.
My mom and I used to make those pre-packaged cookies a lot.
And these days? It felt like this was Mrs. Chambers' way of asking what the deal was with Trisha's mom.
We're both busy, but I suppose we should do it again sometime.
From there, the questions didn't stop. So how did you two meet? What do you plan to do with your degree? Are you originally from Southern California? Alexis barely said a word because every time Trisha said something, Mrs. Chambers would follow it up with a question. Trisha told Alexis that Kara asked about her. Who's Kara? Mrs. Chambers asked. After Trisha answered, the questions continued. That many foster kids? How did you do it? Do you want to stay for dinner? Alexis's dad is going to fire up the grill once we're finished. That question tripped Trisha up, but she told part of the truth.
Thank you, but I can't. I have to work tonight.
Oh, on a Saturday night? Where do you work?
This Chili's restaurant in Inglewood. I'm a waitress.
No way Mrs. Chambers hung out in that part of town. Well, some other time then. We'd love to have you. And that's when Dr. Chambers made his way through the kitchen. Trisha actually swallowed when she saw him. He was a huge man and clearly in excellent shape, even though he was balding on the top. He had the family uniform on too, polo shirt and pressed khaki pants, super expensive watch and nice dress shoes, even though it was a Saturday. Sweetie, meet Trisha, Alexis's friend from school, Mrs. Chambers said with an encouraging smile. Trisha wiped her hands on her apron and shook Dr. Chambers' massive fist. His hands were big, but his fingers were slender. A surgeon's hands. Trisha pictured him throwing her out the front door by the ass of her pants.
Nice to meet you, Trisha. Are you ladies having a nice time?
We sure are. Trisha's a natural at this pie thing. Mrs. Chambers shook her hips a little as her husband passed by and kissed her on the forehead. They seemed so at ease with each other, but it was clear that things were tense between him and Alexis. He barely looked at her. He just poured himself some water and said he'd be back to sample the finished product. He did nod at Alexis, in this weird, yeah, I know you're here kind of way, but it wasn't fatherly. She only had a handful of memories of her own dad, but Trisha remembered he had never treated her like that. When Trisha looked back at Alexis, she tried to cheer her up with a smile, but Alexis barely smiled back. The muscles in the side of her neck were tense. Trisha was determined to ease that tension after pie time. As they kept baking, Alexis seemed to relax. Her mom was actually cool, and Alexis seemed to get along with her just fine as long as her dad wasn't around. They made a ton of pies, taking a little break to make BLTs with this fancy bread Mrs. Chambers insisted they try. Late in the afternoon, Mrs. Chambers' cell phone rang. Oh, it's your sister. One moment, girls.
How am I doing?
Trisha whispered as she mixed some more filling. Great, Alexis replied. Sorry she's grilling you.
It's fine.
Yeah, bring her here. It's okay, honey. I'm still Mom, Mrs. Chambers said. Her upbeat tone was gone. What was that all about? Alexis asked as she hung up. Cinta had a little too much to drink at the wine tasting, so Sasha is bringing her here. Ugh, why can't she bring her to her place? The painters are still there, and something about Michael not being keen on Cinta when she's had too much to drink. I don't blame him, Alexis grumbled. It'll be fine. How are those berries doing, Trisha?
Great.
Trisha finished with the berry mixture, and Mrs. Chambers moved her on to this chocolate concoction that needed a lot of condensed milk. The kitchen door thudded open just as she opened the first can, and Alexis's sister, Sasha, came stumbling in with a drunk woman leaning her whole body against her.
Hey, Dad,
she called. Oh, God. Mrs. Chambers dropped her rolling pin and grabbed the woman's other side.
Christ, you're heavy. I'm sorry, Mom. The painters aren't even close to done and her grandma just got back from hospice like 20 minutes ago. Her mom will kill me if I bring her there like this. Hey, Mrs. C.
The drunk woman slurred. Can I help? Trisha offered, not exactly sure what she could do.
Oh, don't worry. We got this,
Sasha said. That's when the drunkard looked up and focused her bleary gaze right on Trisha's face.
Hey, I know you. Right, Sash? We know her.
The look on Sasha's face told Trisha everything she needed to know. Alexis had told her that her sister knew how they'd really met, but Trisha didn't think Sasha would recognize her. But the kick that Trisha felt in her chest registered on Sasha's face. She gulped, then her eyes darted to the floor right before she plastered on a fake smile.
I'm pretty sure you don't, Sasha said. You're Alexis's girlfriend, Trisha, right?
Yeah. Trisha forced a smile back.
Nice to meet you. Let me just get her off my back and I'll come help you guys. Dad!
Dr. Chambers swung in before they got Cinta halfway through the inner door to the kitchen and swooped the wasted girl up into his arms.
I thought you were going to a tasting, not a chugging,
he said.
Yeah, well, that was the plan, but Bright Eyes here decided to tie one on. No. Wait. I do know you. Sasha, remember? You're the stripper. Treasure.
Drunky McWasted drawled, wagging her finger in Trisha's direction.
Remember the stripper from your bachelorette party? I have no idea what you're talking about. Come on, we can put her on the laundry bench. No carpet in there.
Sasha suggested, trying to keep her parents focused on the mission at hand.
No!
The woman struggled and practically fell out of Dr. Chambers' arms. He didn't fight her, probably because he didn't want an elbow in the face, but he caught her by the armpits and held her up before she hit the floor.
We went to that strip club and baby Chambers here got a dance in the VIP room from this chick right here. I'm good with faces, believe me. That's great, Cinta. Why don't we go sit down?
Sasha said. Cinta wasn't having it. She looked right at Alexis and started laughing. Actually, it was more like an evil cackle.
Wow. Just wow. I didn't know you had it in you, Lex. I didn't know you had the social skills, but you scored a stripper. A fine stripper. Strippers turn tricks too. Ooh-wee, she must be teaching you a thing or two. But do you?
She practically swung around in Trisha's direction, squirming like mad to get out of Dr. Chambers' grasp. Trisha didn't know whether to slap this woman, throw up, or run. Didn't matter though. Cinta just kept going.
Know what you're getting into? I mean, I'm all for equal rights. I love the ladies, but you know she's crazy, right?
Okay, that's enough. Richard! Mrs. Chambers was practically fuming.
I got it.
Dr. Chambers finally muscled that Cinta woman over his shoulder and carried her out of the room. That didn't stop Cinta from getting her point across as they went. Sasha followed, telling her to shut up, but it didn't work.
I'm serious. Ask her. She's nuts. Tried to kill herself and everything.
Trisha didn't know what to do. She was afraid to move. She was afraid to blink or breathe. Before she could decide what the best course of action should be, Dr. Chambers was back. Trisha looked up when she felt his eyes on her.
Trisha, it was nice to meet you, but I think it's time for you to go.
Trisha knew exactly what he wasn't saying. Get the F out and don't come back. Trisha looked at Alexis. She knew this was her parents' house, but she was here for Alexis. She'd helped bake 58 pies for Alexis. She was wearing floral fucking pants for Alexis. She wasn't leaving until Alexis told her to go. But Alexis didn't have anything to say. She seemed too preoccupied with the inside of her lip and the edge of the counter. Trisha looked at Mrs. Chambers, who was also attacking the inside of her bottom lip, except she was looking at her husband. Right, so that decision was made. Trisha tore off her pink apron, then grabbed her purse off a nearby stool and made for the door. Then Alexis decided to get with the program. I'll walk you out. Trisha didn't respond, not when Alexis tried to hold the door open for her, not when Alexis offered this bullshit half-assed apology as she opened her car door. She didn't respond either when Alexis tried calling her 20 minutes later. Trisha was pretty done with the whole Chambers organization. Alexis was in her closet when Sasha came looking for her. The lights were off, but the door was cracked open so Alexis could breathe better. Or at least that was the illusion. It had been almost an hour since Trisha left, and Alexis's chest still hurt. Her throat was still raw from her sobbing. She could barely hear herself when she told Sasha to come in. Sasha sunk to the floor, folding her maxi dress around her feet. Why couldn't Alexis be like her? Pretty, confident, normal, not mental.
You okay?
Sasha asked. No.
Mom told me what happened. I tried to talk to Dad, but he's pretty pissed. Give him a little while and he'll calm down. It's not just the stripper thing. You know Dad doesn't like it when people make a scene. He's pissed at Cinta too.
Alexis remembered how drunk Cinta had gotten at Sasha's wedding and how unamused everyone had been with her behavior that night. It's not that. It's... Did Cinta pass out?
In and out. She was too dizzy to fight Dad when he dropped her on the bench. She'll sleep it off and then I'll take her home. When she sobers up, we're going to have a real talk. I can't put up with what she pulled today. But I want you to be okay.
Alexis sighed. It had been so long since she'd felt this angry, this upset. I'm just embarrassed. Trisha knew about what happened last year, but...
Don't be embarrassed, Lex.
Alexis's head snapped up at the sound of Cinta's voice. She was standing in the doorway, looking like fresh shit with her makeup smudged.
We are delighted to bring you an extraordinary offer. Purchase through us and get any audiobook of your choice for a mere $2.99.
Splashed water on her face and forgotten she had a whole spread going. But Alexis didn't care to tell her, not when Cinta's face finally matched her shitty personality. It was all a mess. Alexis was on her feet before she even thought to stop herself. Fuck you, Cinta, Alexis said bluntly. Cinta balked and stumbled back a step.
Excuse me?
I said fuck you. And then Sasha was on her feet, edging her way between them. I know you never liked me, and I never liked you either, but you're my sister's friend, so I put up with you. But you really are just a useless alcoholic asshole who has to shit on other people just so someone will pay attention to you.
Now hold up, I came up here to apologize and
I'm gonna tell you you're a horrible person. I'm gonna ask my sister why she bothers with someone who is such a shithead. You wrecked a perfectly good afternoon because... Cinta threw up on the carpet. It was just a fountain of burgundy red and whatever bits of appetizers she'd eaten throughout the day all over Alexis's white carpet. Leave it to Cinta to drive her girlfriend out of the house and Alexis out of her own room. She grabbed her phone and left Sasha to deal with the mess. Things didn't look good, but she hoped Trisha would at least text her back. Chapter 10. Trisha didn't text her back. She didn't answer her phone on Sunday either, or text Alexis back when Alexis texted her before she went to bed Sunday night. In the guest room because her carpet wouldn't be thoroughly cleaned until Monday. Alexis tried to be patient and not let her imagination run too wild, but she had this terrible feeling that things with Trisha might be over. Monday morning, she just wanted to know. If Trisha was going to dump her, she wanted to get it over with so she could crawl back into her closet with her violin and go back to being the awkward loser she knew she was born to be. She took her time walking to Professor Kapoor's class. When she got there, she tried not to cry when she saw Trisha sitting in the front row. The seat next to her was taken. "Ooh, trouble in paradise," someone said. Shut up. Professor Kapoor shut the mutters and the laughter down as he closed the door. Alexis didn't have time to soak in how stupid she felt because he got right to his lecture. When he dismissed class, Trisha was out the door like a bullet. She was wearing massively tall heels, but she was booking it, taking these brisk little steps that had her out of the room before Alexis could even pack up her stuff. She didn't make the conscious decision to chase Trisha, but she did rush after her, saying her name until Trisha finally turned around. "We are not going to make this a big deal," Trisha said between her teeth as she grabbed Alexis's hand. "Let's go." Alexis let Trisha tug her to the parking structure.
They didn't head up to her car. Instead, Trisha pulled her to a little corner between a concrete wall and a tall shrub. Alexis could have sworn Trisha's eyes were glowing red when she spun on her. "Okay, what do you want?" I want to talk to you. About us," Alexis said. "I don't want to be with you anymore. Any more questions?" "Can you at least tell me why? I know what happened with Cinta was crazy, but—"
"God, I'm not mad about your sister's drunk friend."
Trisha let out a deep sigh and clenched her fists at her side. She squeezed her eyes shut for a moment, but when she opened them, she refused to look Alexis in the eye. She'd never seen Trish this angry before.
"That chick was saying all of this crazy stuff and you wouldn't even look at me. Your dad tells me to kick rocks and you wouldn't even look at me. Then..."
That's when she looked up.
"You text me and call me like 100 times, and it's like you don't even know what you're apologizing for."
"I'm sorry Cinta told my parents about you, and I'm sorry my dad told you to leave."
"That's not why I'm mad. You knew my mom for 3 seconds and you gave her this whole speech about how much you care about me and how much you just want to spend time with me and just be a great friend to me. And then when the shit really goes down, you're just standing there looking at pie crust."
I didn't know what to say.
"I know. You didn't know to speak up for me. Or shit, you didn't even think it was time to stick up for yourself. It just occurred to me that you are only going to nut up when you feel comfortable. But my life isn't comfortable like yours, and I need to be with someone who can handle shit when it doesn't come on a perfect platter. I want to be with someone who will stick up for me. I'm a really great stripper, and Cinta was right, I am fine as hell, but I'm a fucking human, Lex. I have feelings, and when my girlfriend who claims to care about me so much can't say a peep in my defense, then maybe she's not the girlfriend for me. So are we done here?"
Alexis had nothing to say. Trisha was right. She was embarrassed about Cinta making an ass out of everyone and saying those things about the both of them. But she had kept quiet because she'd been afraid of what her dad would say if she'd opened her mouth. She'd been afraid of what conversation would really go on if she or Trisha had tried to explain why Trisha was a stripper and why she'd lied about it. And 3 days later, she still didn't know what to say. Trisha deserved better. "I'm sorry." It was her pathetic attempt at a grovel. "I know you are. I'll see you later." Alexis knew better than to try and stop her again, so she let her walk away. Alexis knew pain. She would never forget how much opening her wrist had hurt. The way her dad looked at her or said her name when he even bothered to talk to her was a daily slap in the face. But Alexis didn't know shit about pain until Trisha cut her out of her life. Alexis thought about dropping Professor Kapoor's class, but she'd missed the deadline to reschedule courses, and she'd promised her mom she would take a full credit load. Trisha seemed to be handling things just fine, though. She showed up to class every other day, fresh and beautiful, smiling and making small talk with her new desk mate, some Asian guy who seemed to have found his home in hip-hop culture. Alexis was a little jealous, even though she knew nothing was going on between them. She sat there every other day trying to pay attention, but really just staring at the back of Trisha's head, thinking about how much she missed her, how much she just wanted to touch her again, be close to her again. This was not a pain she was ready for. This went on for 2 weeks. 2 weeks of crying, sulking, and trying not to abuse the fact that she still had Trisha's number in her cell. Something told her that blowing up your ex's phone with "OMG, please take me back" texts was a bad move. Things were worse than before at home. Her mom was on 24-hour suicide watch, checking in with Alexis every 5 seconds to make sure she wasn't going to flip out again. Alexis hadn't imagined things being shittier with her dad, but they were. He hated that she was crying all the time. He hated it when he could tell that she had been crying or that she was thinking about crying. He avoided her as much as he could, mumbling every time he left the room that she needed to pull it together and grow up. The only good thing that came out of it was Sasha ending her friendship with Cinta. She'd told her to apologize to Alexis and her parents for the way she'd acted and for vomiting all over their rug. But when Cinta hesitated, making excuses for the way she'd behaved, her job, her family, Sasha realized that she was about to take back someone who was completely fine being a huge pain in the ass to her family and hurting her little sister on a pretty regular basis. When Sasha called and relayed the story, Alexis finally understood how Trisha felt.
She couldn't honestly expect Alexis to be there for her if Alexis wasn't there for herself. And then she felt like a really big asshole. It was a Tuesday when Alexis sort of snapped. Sasha and Michael had come over for dinner, and Alexis sat there all night looking at them, looking at her parents, and thinking to herself that if she kept going this way, she was going to end up alone. And the thought wasn't even her being overdramatic. She was always going to be gay, and her dad was never going to approve of that. And even though her mom seemed to be coming to terms with her gayness, Alexis would never date anyone that her mom picked out for her. So that left Alexis with a girl of her choice, forever slinking around and avoiding her family. Or it left Alexis alone. She lay in her bed, staring at the ceiling, and she realized that that wasn't okay. She got up and went to her parents' bedroom. They were both still awake watching TV when she knocked on the door. Her mom told her to come in. "Hey, honey, what's going on?" Her dad didn't say anything. He closed his eyes and leaned his head back against the headboard. Alexis sat on the edge of the bed beside her mom. She figured she could ignore her dad too. "Did you like Trisha?" she asked her mom. "Because I liked her a lot, and she dumped me because she knew I wouldn't fight you and Dad to be with her." Her father cracked an eye open and lifted his head.
Is her stripping job going to pay your tuition too?
Her mom shot him a glare, then took Alexis's hand. "I did like Trisha. She was very sweet." "Good. Because I want her back, if she'll take me back. I want to keep spending time with her, and sometimes I might visit her at the strip club, and sometimes I'm going to babysit with her, and I'm not going to stop doing those things because you and Dad don't like it. I can't stop doing any particular thing just because you and Dad don't like it." "I know, honey." And now her mom was crying. This wasn't what she was going for. "Mom? I just want things to be easy for you. That's all. We want things to be easier for you, and that will be hard. Trisha comes from a different kind of family. She lives a different kind of life, and if you're with her, it's going to change things for you and not for the better." "But even you saw how happy I was with her. Dad saw it too. How is that not better? How is anything that makes me happy not better? Should I start playing sports again? Should I beg Cammie and her friends to include me more so I can hang out with the college cool kids? Should I go to Stanford and study medicine even though I don't want to at all? Tell me about this easy life you want for me, because all the things that were so easy about my life before made me want to end it." Her dad grumbled something, but Alexis couldn't hear. "What?" He sat up all the way and finally looked at Alexis. He cleared his throat.
"You have a point," I said. "I'm not sure if you're thinking I'm going to tell you to date this girl because I think you can do better. I think you still need to figure out a few things."
His way of saying she was going through a lesbian phase.
"But you were happier when you were spending time with her. I saw it. Your mother saw it. Even Michael and Sasha said something to me about it. So yes, I would prefer you were happy."
The next part just came out of her mouth. "Thanks, Dad, but I didn't come here for your permission. I'm going to try and get Trisha back. I just wanted to see if she's welcome in your house if she takes me back."
"I'm glad it's still my house."
Her dad closed his eyes and checked out of the conversation, but her mom actually laughed a little. She pulled Alexis closer and wrapped her in her arms. "Yes, honey. Trisha is allowed in the house any time." Alexis hugged her mom tighter. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. Trisha had too much laundry and reading to do. She'd lugged her crap into the laundromat, changed out of the jeans and the t-shirt she'd spilled soda on the way over, and set up her little study center on the counter. But she couldn't get her mind right. She kept looking at her phone. Her fingers were itching to text or call Alexis, but she couldn't. She wouldn't let herself do it. She was going to ask for some time off from work. Maybe she could convince Quenisha to come with her, and they could drive down to San Diego for a few days or maybe up to Vegas for a couple of nights. Now that the kids were squared away until Halloween, she had more extra cash to spare and she needed a break. She needed some good times. Breaking up with Alexis had been the right thing to do, but she still felt so shitty about it. Even after explaining to everyone in her life why Alexis hadn't been coming around, she still felt crappy, especially after she told her mom. She didn't go for the full-on "I told you so," But the look she gave Trisha pretty much said it all. Alexis couldn't hack it, and the Chambers family were not their kind of folk. Yeah, it was for the best. Too bad she still had to see Alexis at school. Sitting in the front of the room made things easier. That way she didn't have to spend an hour looking at the back of Alexis's head, thinking about how badly she still wanted to get in her pants. It was good they only had that one class together. Otherwise, Trisha would have had to transfer. She tried to shake off the thought and dig back into her math notes. She'd read the same sentence so many times, she'd barely scratched the surface of her assignment when her first dryer load finished. She'd just dumped all her blues into the laundry basket when she heard the sound of violin music coming from the doorway. Trisha froze. There was no way. Slowly, she turned around, and her fears were confirmed. The only way live violin music would be playing in this shithole laundromat was if someone like Alexis had come through to put on a show. It was her in all her baby butch glory, hair pulled back, wearing a loose polo tee and baggy jeans, and that gorgeous instrument tucked under her chin. Once she knew she had everyone's attention, she made her way across the room, stopping right beside the open dryer door. Of course, Trisha was standing there in her pajama pants and her airbrushed t-shirt that said treasure instead of the cute outfit she'd worn earlier that day. Trisha didn't recognize the song Alexis was playing, but the sound of it was so sweet, so sincere. She had to force herself not to tear up. When Alexis finished, everyone in the place started clapping and cheering. A carefully tossed quarter bounced on the floor between them when some guy shouted, "Play another one!" Trisha couldn't keep her eyes off Alexis as she gently placed her violin on the counter, then turned back to her. "Can we talk?" Alexis asked. "Yeah," Trisha said, sounding choked up. Okay. Alexis looked at the ceiling and let out a shaky breath. "When I did this..." She held out her wrist, bracelet free, and showed Trisha her scar. "I was an overscheduled overachiever. I was doing everything my parents wanted me to do. Everything. Perfect grades, 3 sports, every club, every activity. Everything Mom suggested, I did. Everything my dad thought was good for me, I did it. And I was miserable. I was unhappy about everything in my life. It wasn't just about my parents. It was about school and life and who I am as a person. But after this..." She touched her wrist again. "I was forced to slow down, but I was still living and breathing to make my parents happy. And then I met you, and I knew I couldn't be anyone other than myself with you. I couldn't. And when I was with you, I was so happy, and I didn't realize what that meant. I didn't appreciate why. I didn't realize how much I was taking you for granted. I really like having sex with you, Trisha. I won't even lie about that." Trisha laughed. Alexis was so cute and so nervous she was shaking. But there was something disgustingly adorable about the way she even said the word sex. "But I figured out why I like being around you so much. You're my first real friend. I didn't know what it was like to have a friend. I had teammates and kids in my class who I ate lunch with, but I didn't have real friends." "Lexi..." Alexis shook her head. "I was a shitty girlfriend and friend to you. You were completely right. I was thinking about how you were making me feel. I wasn't thinking about you and how I was making you feel. I kept saying how you were too cool for Cammie and her friends. You were too cool for me. I thought you were invincible and fearless. I thought you didn't need me the way I needed you. And I'm so sorry." Trisha couldn't fight her smile as she hopped up on the counter. She was so fucked. She was so about to take this girl back. Screw it if Alexis's parents didn't like her. "So what are you getting at, Chambers?" "I think I love you and I want to be your girlfriend, but I'm really hoping we can be friends again. I want to hang out again and I need someone to study with. I'm figuring myself out a little and I think I could use the practice at not being a selfish, self-pitying asshole." "You know, I don't think you've ever said that many words in a row before." That's when shy Alexis came back and offered up a shrug. "I just wanted to say that. I hope we can be friends again. I want to be there for you the way I should have been there for you the whole time." Trisha grabbed Alexis by the front of her pressed polo shirt and pulled her forward. "Of course we can be friends again." And then she kissed her. She kissed her good, long and deep with a lot of tongue. She kissed her in a way that totally made her regret the fact that they were standing in a laundromat and not at the foot of her bed. When she let Alexis go, she felt like she could breathe again.
We can definitely be friends again. Friends who kiss a lot. Friends with benefits.
Alexis reached up and touched her hair. Trisha almost sighed. She'd missed that so much. I thought you didn't give it up for friends, though.
Then I guess we'll have to be more than friends. But you can't forget, okay? I'm tough, but I'm more.
Alexis nodded. I know. You're so much more. I'll never forget.
Good.
Trisha wrapped her legs around Alexis's butt and pulled her closer. Alexis's hands went right to her waist, right where they belonged.
How did you know I was here?
It's Wednesday, laundry day.
Well, I'm glad you remembered because the harness I wanted to surprise you with came in the mail yesterday, and I had no one to use it with.
Lucky for us, I have a very good memory. The end. This has been Treasure, written by Rebekah Weatherspoon, narrated by Kira Grace. Copyright 2014 by Rebekah Weatherspoon. Production copyright by Bold Strokes Books, Inc.
Audible hopes you have enjoyed this program.
We are delighted to bring you an extraordinary offer. Purchase through us and get any audiobook of your choice for a mere $2.99. Thank you for watching. Don't miss out on this incredible audiobook deal. With just $2.99, you can access any audiobook of your choice without having to spend the typical $20 to $30 cost from Amazon or Audible. Take advantage of this amazing opportunity and start listening now. Check out the description below to learn more about this amazing opportunity and how to order your next favorite audiobook.